Chapter 992. Your Majesty List. Gulvig, how's your recovery? Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. I can't fight, but I can dive in the deep sea. The bumps and hollows on the huge mermaid Gulvig's body disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. She looked much more pleasing to the eye, showing a little of the true elegance of a mermaid. List smiled and nodded. That's good. Only with a good body can you enjoy this wonderful life. A beautiful life. I just hope that the ocean can be purified as soon as possible so that the countless souls that have fallen into the curse of the cursed dragon can be freed from their pain. Don't worry, everything will be fine. After chatting with Gerweg for a while, List entered the palace-like laboratory on the sea. The interior of this seemingly magnificent and gorgeous building was a lot rougher. The artistic cells of the fish clown were not strong enough. There were too many traces of cutting and chiseling, and it was crooked and had no sense of symmetry. This made List instantly think that in the future, the clown fish would be responsible for the construction, while the serfs would be responsible for the decoration. Your Highness, you're here. The Vice President of the Magic Guild, Kenley, came out to greet him. The Fire Kingdom had yet to be established, so the way they addressed List was rather chaotic. Most people still addressed him as His Highness, and a small number of people already addressed him as His Majesty. There was no unified rule. He himself did not care. His Highness and His Majesty were the same. Where is Achi? His Excellency Achilles is currently conducting an experiment in the laboratory. Your Highness, please follow me. Kenley led the way while reporting the progress of the experiment. Your Highness, while you were away, the laboratory has completed the preliminary purification experiment on the power of the curse. His Excellency Achilles is currently improving the process. In other words, the purification of the curse power will soon be completed. Yes, it's not very difficult. Isn't it difficult? The ancient mermaids couldn't do this even if they tried. Their technological concepts are too backward. Although the weave is declining, magical technology is constantly being developed. Our understanding of the truth far surpasses that of ancient times. Besides, His Excellency Achilles always brings us an endless stream of ideas and helps us expand our horizons. Achi was indeed great. She had greatly advanced magic technology. However, List was also proud of himself because he was the one who had brought many new ideas. If it weren't for the knowledge he taught Achi, the sorcerers here would probably still be in a state similar to, the sky is round and the earth is square. He did not know what the universe was, what planets were, and what gravity was. He asked, then, has the experiment of reversing the seal been completed? The experimental plan has been designed by His Excellency Achilles Roids. It's mainly based on the idea of the curse power contaminating Gerwig and designed a reverse petrification concept. However, I still need to verify some of the experimental steps, which might take a few days. Yes, I understand. When he arrived at the largest laboratory, he saw Achi leading a group of magicians and setting up a huge magic array. A cloud of black mist was constantly changing in the magic circle. It was the power of the cursed dragon that had been stripped from Gerwig. When the experiment was over, Achi personally introduced the theory of the experiment to List. She explained a set of complicated ideas, but List felt that he didn't understand anything. But that did not stop him from nodding solemnly. Since the plan is feasible, we shall use your design to purify the power of the curse. 3 days later, everything was ready. Achi rode Charlie the unicorn, and Gerwig carried List toward the trench where the altar was found. Although Gerwig had not recovered his combat power, as the king of the sea, the mermaid's ability to control water was no weaker than that of the sirens. They could allow List to breathe steadily underwater, and they were not afraid of the water pressure of the deep sea. The three of them quickly dove into the trench and found a gap to enter the sealing altar. 6 mermaid statues still stood around the altar. The 20-meter-tall statues were still very different from real stone statues upon closer inspection. These statues had a vitality, and were lifelike. Gervig swam to the side of a statue, and reached out to caress the face of the statue with complicated emotions in his eyes. It was like nostalgia for the past life, but also like lament that things remained the same, but people had changed. She murmured the other's name, Krostka Tidio Yowski Winika. Etnia, we will be reunited for real soon. It took a long time to recite the names of more than 300 Moon Age words. Then she walked to the side of the second statue and also muttered, Kamenius Podolski Actian Dione. Blebosi. Tibitas. Salavara. Wes Wendy. Coco Rich. The names of the 6 mermaids were all made up of more than 300 Moon Age words. It was hard for the orphan Wendy to remember and not forget them. However, Liszt only remembered the last name of each mermaid, Etnia, Blebosi, Tibitas, Salavara, Wes Wendy, and Coco Rich. He planned to force these mermaids to change their names after obtaining the mermaid's heart and forbid them from using their original names of more than 300 words. At this time, Achi had already cracked the altar, revealing the pitch-black deep hole below. Then she set up a magic array to guide the power of the cursed dragon out, and then bound it with a magic array. Roar. The dragon's roar sounded in his heart and ears. The power of the cursed dragon, which was like a piece of rotten meat, rushed out of the seal and crashed back and forth in the magic array. Then it turned into a dragon claw and wantonly scratched, but under the powerful binding of the magic array, it was constantly broken and purified. The pitch-black fog attached to it became thinner and thinner. In the end, this lump of rotten meat was purified and could no longer condense into a dragon claw. It slowly condensed into the image of a dragon and flew slowly in the magic array. This dragon was grayish-brown and slender like a snake. Its wings were also like bones, and its entire body was wrapped in scales. There was almost no meat on its body, somewhat similar to the desolate dragon in Monster Hunter. Most importantly, where its neck and body were connected, there was also a dragon tooth platform. This dragon can also be ridden. Liszt's pupils dilated slightly. No one knew what he was thinking, but his heart was full of desire. Even though he already had 6 dragons, he still had a thirst for dragons. Your Majesty, Liszt, Her Excellency Achi is going to reverse the mermaid statue. We should stay away so that it doesn't affect Her Excellency's spell casting. Okay. He rode on Gulvig's shoulder and swam into the distance. The mermaid statue did not have anything similar to the dragon tooth platform, so she could only grab Gulvig's hair to stabilize her body. Fortunately, Gulvig was now trying to integrate into human life and had used the scales returned to her to make a set of fish scale tights to avoid being exposed. With the eye of magic, Liszt carefully observed how Achi reversed the petrified statue. He saw the magic array cut the little dragon transformed by the power of the cursed dragon into 6 parts, and then guided the 6 parts of power quickly into the mermaid statue. After a while, these powers seeped out of the mermaid statue and re-merged into a smaller cursed dragon. Obviously, a lot of power was consumed during the reversal process. Achi took out a carefully made glass bottle and put the cursed dragon into the bottle. Then, she removed the magic array and recycled some of the materials that could still be used. Is it done, Achi? Liszt followed Gulvig and swam back to the statue. Achi nodded and smiled. It's done, brother. Now we just need to wait for the petrification seal of the statue to be melted by the power of the cursed dragon, and then they can restore their bodies. How long will it take? It may take a few days. Gulvig immediately said, Your Majesty, Liszt, Her Excellency Achi, I will stay to protect them. When they recover, I will bring them back to Anchor Island and offer the mermaid's heart to Your Majesty. As for now, Your Highness, please accept Gulvig's mermaid's heart, she said. She held her chest with both hands and soon, a beating transparent crystal-shaped azure blue heart jumped out and fell into her hands. She then held it to List. List looked at the mermaid's heart that was much bigger than him and was a little overwhelmed. So, Gulvig, what should I do next? Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation votes, begging for golden keyboard booster card. Chapter 993. Your Majesty just needs to touch it. Gerwig smiled. Well, is that so? List reached out and gently touched the mermaid's heart. Suddenly, the mermaid's heart burst like a bubble, making a popping sound and then bursting into nothingness. A sense of familiarity rose in his heart, as if there was a connection between him and the mermaid Gerwig. At the same time, he immediately understood the meaning of the mermaid's heart. This was a follower's contract. It was not very binding and could be cut off at any time. Its main function was to communicate, so that the two parties could contact each other across long distances. At the same time, the dominant party of the mermaid's heart contract was List's side. He could use the power of the contract to drive the Naga race and the clownfish race. He could also get the protection of the sea, breathe freely, swim freely in the sea, and not be pressured by the sea. This meant that he no longer needed the help of a chi or the mermaids to live underwater. A very practical contract. After understanding the power of the contract, List laughed. But it seems that it's not very useful for me to accept so many mermaids' hearts. Only one mermaid's heart seems to be able to get the protection of the sea and drive the Naga and clownfish at the same time. Gerwig explained softly, Your Majesty, the power of one contract is very weak. The more contracts you have, the more benefits you will get. In the era of the Moon Empire, there was a great archmage who once had 100 mermaids following him. The power he obtained from the contract could split the sea and reveal the dry road at the bottom of the sea. So powerful? Yes, but unfortunately, there are only 7 of us left in this era, so we can't provide you with too much power of the contract. In that case, List looked at a chi and made a decision. I'll contract you, Gerwig. Let a chi contract the remaining 6 mermaids to enhance her ability. 7 contracts would not produce a qualitative change. He had already obtained the protection of the sea and driving the clownfish, so there was no need to contract so many mermaids' hearts. After all, he was a human. He liked to live on land and did not like to soak in the sea. Riding a dragon and soaring in the sky was the right path for him. A chi shook her head. Brother, a chi doesn't need the help of the mermaid's heart. I only need to contract a mermaid to control the ugly fish and study the secrets of contract magic. Big Brother is the king of the Fire Kingdom. It's better to let the mermaids follow you. Seeing the two of them rejecting each other, Gerwig's mood suddenly became very bad. Has the era changed? Mermaids were the masters of the sea. When she was young, she had heard that human magic shooters would break their heads in order to contract a mermaid. But now that the contract was right there, some people were still pushing and shoving as if they were unwilling. She deeply felt that the times had changed. 4 days of waiting. The 6 mermaid statues slowly melted into flesh and blood from their initial petrified state. On the 4th day, Weiss was the first to wake up. He looked at everything in front of him in a daze. Gerwig told her what happened in the past few days. Seeing the purified altar, Weswendi understood and solemnly offered the mermaid's heart to a chi. Then, Etnia, Berbosi, Tibidas, Shalawala, and Kikilichi woke up one after another and offered the mermaid's heart to List. The power of the 6 contracts made List closer to the sea. He was not suppressed by the sea at all when he swam freely. His breathing was also very smooth. He even had a keen sense of water current. He could detect movements far away in the sea. His combat energy was very smooth. Unfortunately, his combat energy was fire. Even though it had become the supreme demonic dragon combat energy, it was still suppressed by the sea. His strength was far inferior to that on land. He also tried to cast the phoenix transformation in the sea. The flames on his body were not extinguished, and his breathing was very normal. However, the phoenix transformation was also severely suppressed when casting magic. His flying speed was also as slow as a dog. It was not even as fast as his human body. Respected human king, your majesty list, thank you for purifying the sea and saving us. We, the last 7 mermaids, are willing to follow you and fight for your country. After discussion, the 7 mermaids officially joined the Fire Kingdom. Unlike the free sea elves like the sirens, the mermaids behaved more like humans. In the era of the Moon Empire, the mermaids built the Sea Kingdom and conquered each other. I am very happy that you have joined us. Humans have entered the era of the night and the aristocratic enfeoffment system. I will first confer you the title of Marquis. When the time is right, you can rebuild the Sea Kingdom and become the vassal of the Fire Kingdom. The mermaids were slightly stronger than the Domain Knight. They were worthy of being conferred the title of Marquis. In the future, List planned to promote them to the title of Duke and let them build the Sea Kingdom around the legendary continent to help the Fire family cultivate the sea. Your Majesty, we want to take a look at the Devil's Sea. We want to see if the fallen demons still exist. After understanding the reality, the mermaids made a request. List also wanted to see it, so he agreed. Then let's go together. So the group of people marched towards the Devil's Sea. He did not have the opportunity to ride the unicorn, so he had to stand on the back of the most powerful mermaid, Etnia. Etnia used to be the king of the Great Western Kingdom. Of course, the Great Western Kingdom had long been destroyed in the sea and became a part of the Devil's Sea. Achi, the super magic, the Eye of Magic, requires high magic to cast. You can teach the 7 mermaids so that they can search for elves in the sea and learn how to develop the elves in the sea. List suddenly thought of this during the voyage. He regarded the Eye of Magic as a treasure and did not want to spread it. However, it did not matter to teach the mermaids the Eye of Magic. After all, the era of the mermaids had passed. They would not go ashore to fight for resources, so they could only develop elves in the sea for him. Okay. Achi was very willing to teach these mermaids magic. In her opinion, mermaids with supreme magic were very good magic experimental assistants, far more reliable than human mages who only had low magic. While hurrying along, she taught them. Although the 7 mermaids had different degrees of decline in strength, they could still swim at a speed of 800 kilometers per hour in the sea. When the mermaids barely understood the casting principle of the Eye of Magic, they had already arrived at the location of the continental slope. The bottom of the shallow sea was called the continental shelf, and the bottom of the deep sea was called the ocean floor. The steep slope between the continental shelf and the ocean floor was called the continental slope. The continental slope was called the steep slope. In fact, it was difficult to see the slope with the naked eye. One could only feel the gradual deepening of the seabed. When passing by a trench on the continental slope, the king of the trench people, Sheriwala, suddenly said in a low voice, "I remember this place. This is the Eyelid Lines Trench. My mother fell into a demon here and never returned to the Devil's Sea." She stood on the edge of the trench and looked at the dark abyss of the deep sea. She let out a long sigh and said, "Many years have passed, but the eyelid lines have not changed much. It's just that the seawater is much cleaner, and I do not feel the pollution of the cursed dragon." Chapter 994. Mission completed. Reward, Mermaid's Heart. While Salavara was reminiscing about the past, List called out the smoke mission. After all the mermaids were resurrected, the mission was naturally completed. Mission: the mermaids have offered their mermaid's heart to you and become your followers. However, there is a thorn in every mermaid's heart that has not been removed. Perhaps exploring the Devil's Sea will help them regain their confidence in life. Reward: 1 big elf. Exploring the Devil's Sea was a predetermined voyage, and he could remove the thorn for the mermaids. When he dispersed the smoke, Salavara had already finished reminiscing, so they continued their journey along the continental slope toward the deep sea. Along the way, they gradually felt the ocean currents gradually become stronger, and there were even chaotic whirlpools wantonly in the sea. Sometimes when they floated to the surface, they could see the sea was covered with dark clouds, and the storm did not stop. Before it was polluted by the cursed dragon, the Devil's Sea was called the Sea of Storms. A mermaid named Al-Akir was born there. She tried to gather the power of the mermaid's heart to calm the never-ending storm in the Sea of Storms, but unfortunately, she did not succeed. Aetnia, the king of Atlantis, looked at the storm and said to List, "I thought it was the pollution of the cursed dragon that caused the sea to become like this. The cursed dragon only polluted the sea, not the sky and land." In the era of the Moon Empire and the Sun Empire, the two great human kingdoms relied on the sky ship to communicate. It was the great work of the magic shooters. Unfortunately, the two empires had already perished in my era, Aetnia said to List. Among the 7 mermaids, she was the strongest and the oldest. Not counting the time she was sealed, she was already 379 years old and knew a lot. Mermaids had a lifespan of 500 years, and she was close to middle-aged. She had also given birth to a mermaid, but unfortunately, her daughter was also polluted and became a demon. "How much do you know about the Moon Empire and the Sun Empire?" List asked, hoping to get more information from Aetnia. "There was a great war in ancient times. Have you heard of it? Human magic shooters joined forces with dragons and killed a moon dragon." "Moon dragon? Is there such a dragon? I thought there were only evil dragons, holy dragons, elemental dragons, metal dragons, and gem dragons." Since she didn't know about the moon dragon, she definitely didn't know about the weave dragon either. "In that case, you don't know about the Great Ancient War. I've never heard of it, but I think it should exist. If it wasn't for the Great War, the Moon Empire and the Sun Empire wouldn't have fallen, and the cursed dragon wouldn't have been killed. Unfortunately, I can't give you more information, Your Majesty. When I was born, the sea was shrouded in the shadow of the cursed dragon. As the current in the sea became more and more violent, navigation became more and more difficult. List felt it the most. Even though he had 6 mermaids' hearts, it was still difficult for him to move freely in such a violent sea. Even the mermaids were more or less affected and slowed down. Only Achi, who was riding on the unicorn, was content and unaffected. This was related to the unicorn's special ability, Void Gallop. It could ignore the bindings of space and matter, and even the most violent ocean currents could not shake its body. Envy. However, he couldn't ride on it, so List could only grab Aetnia's hair and stick close to her clothes made of fish scales to reduce the area of obstruction. "We're about to reach the Devil's Sea," Coco Rich, the king of the Lost Sea, who was leading the way, reminded him. Her former kingdom, the Lost Sea, was located on the edge of the Devil's Sea, so she was very familiar with this area. The land had changed greatly over thousands of years, but the sea had changed very little. Half an hour later, Coco Rich reminded again, "This is the Hermit Crab Trench, the border of the Devil's Sea, and the border of the Lost Sea. Your Majesty, Your Excellency, everyone, we're entering the Devil's Sea." "Is this the Devil's Sea? There doesn't seem to be any demons." List held a magic wand to illuminate the surroundings. Because they were deep in the sea, there was no light, and the atmosphere here looked gloomy. With the eye of magic, they could see sea monsters lurking around. But there was no sign of demons. Maybe the power of the cursed dragon was really purified by the sea? Gerweg said with uncertainty. Aetnia said solemnly, "Be careful." Just then, Achi, who was using the eye of magic, suddenly said, "There is a huge monster corpse in front, and there are many small sea monsters parasitized on the corpse." Following the direction she pointed, List soon found the monster corpse. The corpse was still faintly glowing with chaotic mana feedback. The corpse was almost bigger than an aircraft carrier. Even a dragon was small in front of the corpse. Inside the corpse, there were many strange sea monsters parasitized. This is Leviathan's whale fall, Etenia explained. Leviathan? Whale fall. Whales are the largest creatures in the sea. When they die, their bodies will slowly sink to the bottom of the sea. This process may last for hundreds of thousands of years, and some small creatures will live on the whale's body. When the whale's remains sink to the bottom of the sea, it will soon form a piece of seabed jade. The stronger the whale, the better the quality of the jade. Then what is Leviathan? When Liszt asked this question, he thought of the legendary sea monster Leviathan, which was said to be a subdragon as powerful as a dragon. Before Etenia could answer, the youngest mermaid beside him, Brabazzi, who was only 66 years old, the king of the saltwater race, rushed to answer, I know. Leviathan is the most powerful creature in the sea, and it's as powerful as a dragon. Legend has it that after a mermaid becomes a magic shooter, she will be accompanied by Leviathan. So, Leviathan is also a kind of whale? Liszt was already close to Leviathan's whale fall. The light of the magic flashlight illuminated the corpse, but only the broken remains were left, and it was impossible to see what Leviathan looked like when it was alive. Leviathan should be the largest whale, born to be a supernatural being. It has been extinct in the era we live in. I didn't expect to encounter its whale fall. Etenia casually crushed a jellyfish monster that wanted to attack. Your Majesty, if I'm not mistaken, this Leviathan has been sinking for more than 800 years. How do you know? Leviathan's whale fall is 10 meters per year. We are now at a depth of more than 8,000 meters, which is more than 800 years. What will you do if you encounter a whale fall? Liszt looked at the remains of Leviathan, which had most of the skeleton exposed, and wondered if the remains could be made into weapons. He no longer doubted any legends. Basically, all the legendary creatures had shown up. There were 3 subdragons that claimed to be as powerful as dragons: the sky monster Branches, the land monster Behemoth, and the sea monster Leviathan. Just by looking at Leviathan's body shape, one could guess that they might really be as powerful as dragons. In fact, unicorns and phoenixes were not much weaker than dragons. Etenia smiled. We will feel lucky. In the mermaid's custom, encountering a whale fall means good luck. Chapter 995. Liszt wanted to take some of the bones back to make weapons, but when he heard that clownfish also used Leviathan bones as weapons, he gave up the idea. He had to pay attention to his status. However, he still took 2 smaller Leviathan bones and brought them back for research. If they were really valuable, he would remember the location and come back to collect them. After leaving Leviathan, the team continued to explore. The world of the deep sea was far more desolate than Liszt had imagined. There were no colorful creatures. This place was forever shrouded in darkness where light could not be seen, and all kinds of weird, gloomy noises could be heard. Living here for a long time would definitely make one crazy. Occasionally, they encountered swimming sea monsters, but when they felt the aura of the mermaids, they turned around and ran. After sailing for a while, the navigator Corey Rich suddenly shouted, Your Majesty, Your Excellency, everyone, there is an undersea tower in front of us. It may be a building of the Sea Kingdom in the past. So they sped up. However, as they got closer and closer to the tower, they slowly sensed a familiar aura. It's the aura of the cursed dragon. This tower has the remaining power of the cursed dragon. Gulvig had been polluted by the cursed dragon, so he was very sensitive to it. Be careful, Liszt reminded. There's something wrong with this tower. A chief frowned and said, Charlie feels that there's a very evil power in it. This power is awakening. It's the power of the cursed dragon. Snort. The unicorn responded with an uneasy snort. In fact, without a cheese reminder, everyone soon found that there was something wrong with this tower. When the light from the magic flashlight shone on the tower, what they saw was not an ancient rock structure, but a pile of bones stacked together. No one knew how long it had been, but many bones had fused with each other. This was a tower of corpses. As if they were stimulated, the bones began to crack, and in the vision of the magic eyes, Linley could see that the tower, which was originally devoid of any mana retroaction, suddenly began to bloom with a black and bright magical radiance. This was the radiance of the dark attribute, a kind of black and purple luster. This is not an ancient building left by the Sea Kingdom. This is a tomb made of the corpses of demons. Etnia screamed. These demons are crawling out of their graves. They haven't been purified by the sea. As she screamed, the skeletal remains of the tower suddenly exploded. Countless agile monsters rushed out of the tower and rushed towards List and the others. These monsters were like vicious dogs released from a cage. One by one, they formed an underwater storm. The 7 mermaids panicked and wanted to escape. Don't scatter, release your magic. List grabbed Atenia's hair and quickly ordered, just some low-level devils. Don't panic, stop them. He could see that although there were many devils, their magic power level was low, and their density was not high. They were only at the level of low-level sea monsters. With such a sea monster, he could defeat an entire legion. Under the influence of the contract power of the mermaid's heart, the mermaids quickly stabilized and began to release their respective magic. Countless water vortexes, rings of water, and other magic were thrown at the group of devils. The fastest and calmest one was Achi. She rode Charlie the unicorn, quickly took out the jewel crown and put it on her head. Then she held the 8 dragons' divine sword and began to cast spells. Countless seawater condensed into water arrows under her control, and then, like lasers, shot at the group of devils. Almost immediately, the fiercely pouncing devils all sank to the bottom of the sea like dumplings in a pot. Brother, fight and retreat. These are just the devils on the outer layer of the tower. Achi saw more powerful devils awakening inside the tower. They may be the fallen devils of the Nagas, or even the fallen devils of the mermaid. Understood. List turned around and ordered, fight and retreat. Gulvig, Etenia, and Blaboxi release magic to stop the devils. Tibitas, Sharawala, and Koklik are responsible for controlling the seawater and helping them retreat. 3 mermaids retreated. 3 mermaids fought. Under List's command, they cooperated in an orderly manner. On the other side, Achi also commanded Viswendi to fight and retreat. Her combat power alone was stronger than that of all the mermaids, and she could move calmly. Charlie the unicorn knew how to cooperate. There were no brilliant fireworks, only magic power boiling at the bottom of the sea. The battle quickly became white-hot. Layers of devils were killed like dumplings, but more devils rushed over. The tower in the distance collapsed at a speed visible to the naked eye, all turning into devils. Except for the devils on the outer layer, which had probably been purified into corpses, the devils inside were still alive. List did not intervene in the battle. He just carefully observed the battlefield with his magic eyes, and the black-purple luster outlined the shapes of devils. Some were like fish clowns, with half fish and half frog, and human arms. Some devils were barehanded, and some were holding bones. Obviously, they should have been fish clowns contaminated by the power of the cursed dragon. Their bodies had shrunk severely, but their combat power was stronger. Some of them were not fish clowns, but probably fish, jellyfish, octopuses, turtles, and other similar sea monsters. More and more. Etnia panted. The fallen Naga devils have rushed out of the tower. Achi's voice was very calm. There are too many devils. Let Achi cover the retreat. You guys leave quickly. Eternal ice. As she spoke, the 8 dragons' sword glowed, and a huge frozen wall condensed in the surrounding sea, blocking the countless devils outside. Crack, crack, crack. The horde of devils crashed into the frozen city wall, and soon, cracks appeared on the huge frozen city wall, which then shattered with a loud rumble. Taking advantage of this opportunity, The mermaids had already retreated a distance, finally avoiding the situation of being surrounded by devils. Seeing this, List shouted, "Mermaids, release all your magic and bombard the devils surrounding Achi." Boom! Boom! Sound could also be transmitted in the sea. The huge sound of magic bombardment was enough to break the ocean currents, roll up countless bubbles, and blow up groups of fish clowns into pieces. But more and more fish clowns filled in. Like the Walking Dead, they did not know what fear was, nor did they know how to retreat. So, on one side, a magic team made of sirens and mermaids, and on the other side, an army of devils made of fish clowns and fallen sea monsters, fought fiercely on the bottom of the sea that was 8,000 meters deep. The mermaids had only fought for a short while, and they were already panting. Their bodies had not recovered to their best state yet. Gradually, only Achi was left in the main force of the battle, but it was Achi who blocked the thousands of devils by herself. Half of her body was water elemental incarnation, and the other half was ice elemental incarnation. Casting water super magic spells and ice super magic spells, she forcibly blocked the violent attacks of the devils. Roar! After paying a huge price, some fish clowns actually began to release magic. Black magic rings rippled from their bodies, quickly covering the battlefield. The super magic that Achi released seemed to melt when it encountered the black magic rings, and its power became weaker and weaker. At this time, the second wave of devils from the tower had already rushed over. They were taller and held all kinds of weapons, like giant snakes standing on their feet. From 2 to 6 hands, the shapes were different. Obviously, they were devils that had fallen from the Nagas, and the dark magic was much stronger. The magic released was also more powerful, and the corrosion of Achi's super magic was getting stronger and stronger. "Achi, if you can't stop them, don't fight, let's retreat first," List called out loudly. The mermaids had withdrawn from the battlefield, and Achi could return at any time. However, the usually quiet Achi at this moment seemed to be hot-blooded. She just dropped a sentence. "Brother, wait for a while with the mermaids, Achi hasn't exerted her full magic power for a long time. Take this opportunity to go all out and familiarize yourself with the real fighting style of a magic shooter." After saying that, the half of the ice elemental incarnation quickly switched to space elemental incarnation and casually released a spatial crack, swallowing countless devils until not even their bones were left. Her posture was relaxed, and there was no tension in facing the devils at all. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor Mobile Version website. Chapter 996. Boom. A pitch-black crack spread in the sea, and all the devils that came into contact with it would be split into 2 halves. Whether it was a low-level ugly fish devil, a high-level Naga devil, or some other devils that had fallen from the sea, none of them could avoid it. This was the power of space magic. As long as one could not be immune to physical damage, it was difficult to resist space magic. The water magic and ice magic at the beginning were just Achi's small test. After switching to space elemental incarnation, she really showed her extraordinary strength. With the help of Charlie the Unicorn, every spell was a supreme magic construct, and its power skyrocketed 10 times. "So powerful!" Etenia exclaimed. "Her Excellency Achi is even more powerful than the ancient archmages. I have never heard of an existence that can trigger supreme magic construct with just a wave of her hand." Wesley Wendy was also amazed and secretly delighted that he was following a powerful magic shooter. He felt honored. "Your Majesty, the level of magic has developed to such a level in this era?" Gerwig asked in surprise. List looked at Achi's back and was also very happy. The weak little siren finally became one of the most powerful people in the world. Achi's talent is extraordinary. I am afraid there are only a few archmages who can master space magic, and she is also favored by the unicorn. The unicorn only favors pure people. To be favored by the unicorn, if Her Excellency Qi was in the era of the Moon Empire, she would definitely be able to compete for the position of emperor. The Moon Empire was an imperial and slave country ruled by archmages, and the emperor was the leader of the empire. Unlike the era of the night, where all countries had male heirs, there were many female emperors in the Moon Empire. This was because the cultivation of magic had nothing to do with gender, and the probability of women becoming archmages was no less than that of men. A Qi can definitely compete for the position of emperor. List nodded in agreement. Others might only think that the unicorn was magical, but he knew very well that the super magic of a Qi's supreme magic construct came from the unicorn. Such a magical creature was no different from a dragon. Now that Her Excellency Qi is eliminating the demons, it seems that we have nothing else to do. Blue Posy said. List thought for a bit, then said, "You guys go and catch a few lone devils, preferably a few of all kinds of devils. I want them alive so that we can bring them back to do experiments and research a way to completely purify the sea as soon as possible." Yes, Your Majesty is right. The mermaids were determined to purify the sea, so they were naturally full of enthusiasm. They rushed over and quickly caught a group of devils, one of each type of devil, in between the gaps of a Qi's magic. List shook his head. Not enough. I need at least 3 of each type. Your Majesty, we don't have any restraints. It will be difficult to control them if we catch too many of them. I have some here. Come, orichalcum shackles and chains, as many as you want. He took out a bunch of chains and shackles from his spatial ring. With the orichalcum dragon Marta around, he had as much orichalcum as he wanted. It just so happened that he often went out to capture World of Warcraft, so he carried a large number of orichalcum shackles and chains with him. Of course, these were not pure orichalcum, but special equipment mixed with orichalcum, which had the effect of locking magic power. The only equipment that was really made purely from caves was a 10-meter-long orichalcum dragon spear, which was left in the castle. The spatial ring only had a diameter of 5 meters, so it could not contain the orichalcum dragon spear. With the equipment made from orichalcum, the mermaids quickly caught as many as 20 different kinds of evil creatures. These evil creatures retained their biological forms before the fall, but all their magic power had been converted to the dark element. Their bodies became shriveled, full of tumors and pustules, and they were cruel and had no intelligence. Their combat power was probably much higher than before. Many clowns had no magic power before the fall, but after the fall, they basically had dark magic power. It's hard to imagine that the power of a dragon can pollute so many creatures. According to the legends, the evil dragon is a dragon born with this world. It is neither alive nor dead, and it does not have a lifespan of 1,000 years, which even the holy dragon cannot do. Nia explained to List. That's why the death of the cursed dragon can pollute the entire ocean, and it can't be completely purified even after thousands of years. It could not be said that the holy dragon was not as powerful as the evil dragon, but the power of the holy dragon was more special. The invisible dragon's power of space, the smoke dragon's power of fate, the twilight dragon's power of time, the emerald dragon's power of mind, and the fairy dragon's power of life might not be suitable for fighting, but the magic of these powers was irreplaceable. As for the evil dragon, Soren did not know what power the silent dragon had, nor did the shadow dragon. He only knew that the cursed dragon could pollute creatures, from the body to the soul. This power was more like the black dragon and white dragon infected by the light dragon, rather than the power of the cursed dragon itself. The difference between the evil and the white dragon did not seem to be big. After looking at the appearance of the evil creatures for a moment, List retracted his gaze and said to Etnia and the other mermaids, "Perhaps the sea is still affected by the power of the cursed dragon, but it doesn't matter. Now that Qi and I have understood this, we will purify the sea. Thank you, Your Majesty, for your kindness. This is what I should do. I am the king of the Fire Kingdom, the lord of the sea recognized by all countries in the legendary continent. All the seas are my territory. Liszt raised his status and felt that it was natural. I also need your help to purify the sea. Let us develop the Fire Kingdom together and accumulate strength. Please rest assured, Your Majesty. We are indebted to Your Majesty and Her Excellency A Chi for saving our lives. The rest of our lives will trace back to Your Majesty and Her Excellency A Chi. The 7 mermaids solemnly expressed their loyalty. Liszt maintained his gentlemanly smile and looked forward. A Chi was still fighting with the evil creatures. The densely packed evil creatures attacked like a swarm of locusts, but when they got close to A Chi, they were cut to death by the dense space cracks. Layers of evil creatures fearlessly charged forward and then turned into corpses, covering the bottom of the sea with a thick layer of devil-card carpet. The 8 dragons' divine sword did not amplify spatial magic, so A Chi put it back into her space ring. The jewel crown on her head shone brightly, reflecting off the golden spiral horn of Charlie the unicorn. Abundant magic light flickered, constantly extracting the magic from the void. It even formed a spider web behind her that could only be seen with the magic eye. That was the weave. A huge amount of magic was extracted from the weave, causing Liszt to be alarmed. He felt that the weave was already unstable and could collapse at any time. He could not help but think, if this kind of battle happens a few more times, will the weave dragon be sucked dry? Thinking about it, it should not. After all, the weave dragon had once provided magic to the Moon Empire and the Sun Empire, 2 prosperous magic civilizations. At that time, there were many magic shooters, and they all absorbed the magic of the weave dragon, but they did not squeeze the weave dragon dry. Now that the weave dragon was asleep and the weave had shrunk, A Chi, a magic shooter, could not consume all the magic. Amidst the ups and downs of his heart, a cloud of smoke slowly floated in front of him, condensing into a serpentine. Mission completed. Reward, a great elf. At the same time, in the distant Firewood Castle, one of Liszt's many lesser elves suddenly sulked. Because it was reprimanded by the bully Ella today, and because it talked back, it was almost beaten. When would such days come to an end? Chapter 997. The Calabash Elf used to live in the forest. One day, it was suddenly discovered by a group of moon killer people. They tied it up and sent it to the altar. At this time, the great dragon knight descended from the sky and saved it. It also became one of the elves contracted by the dragon knight. However, because there were too many elves in the castle, the Calabash Elf did not receive enough attention. It didn't even have a name. Of course, the Calabash Elf did not mind. It was just a naughty elf that entertained itself every day. It liked to fill the calabash with water and sprinkle it in the castle. It even wet several famous paintings on the walls of the castle. Originally, even if it did such a bad thing, no one would blame it. At most, there would be servants to stop it from destroying paintings and other items. However, one day another group of elves came to the castle. Among them was a thorny great elf. As soon as it arrived, it announced that it had taken over the castle. Wah! The Calabash Elf remembered very clearly that every time it used the calabash to pour water, there would be an unknown roar behind it. Then, the bad-tempered great elf would yell at it. This made it very annoyed. Every time it poured water, it would be on tenterhooks, afraid that the great elf would jump out and yell at it. And today, while the tyrant great elf and the dragon elf Carrie were quarreling, it took out the precious calabash on top of its head and poured it all over the place. Then, it was stopped by the bully who had just finished quarreling, who started scolding it profusely. Budgie, budgie! The Calabash Elf, who was annoyed by the scolding, raised its head and roared at the thorny great elf. It was not one to be submissive. Huh! The thorny great elf was stunned for a moment, then let out an even louder roar. Wah! It raised its palm and was about to hit the elf, but for some reason, the palm did not fall at the last moment. The calabash elf took the opportunity to slip away. Although it did not get beaten, the more it thought about it, the angrier it became. It felt that there was a shadow hanging over the firewood castle, and it could not fight against this shadow. Its life would continue to be a tragedy. However, it did not realize that while it was sad because of the bully, its body was changing. It began to grow taller and bigger, and its demand for jade powder increased greatly. Its mind became more agile, and its emotions became more abundant. The light had come inadvertently. Mission: the clownfish race is a race suitable for hard labor. However, as a remnant of the ancient intelligent race, what restricts their development is reproduction. As the king of the Fire Kingdom, why don't you solve this problem and expand the scale of the clownfish race? Reward: magic cloak. At the bottom of the Devil Sea, List looked at the new smoke mission thoughtfully. He guessed that the reward of the mana cloak should be from the 6 statues of the ancient magic shooters. The equipment he had obtained so far was sealed in the statues. As for the mission content, it was to help the clownfish race solve their reproductive problems. As for the solution, his first thought was the improved version of the vitality potion. This medicine, named Source of Vitality, had benefited many infertile families. Even his cousin Meopal was able to reproduce because of the Source of Vitality. This task could be entrusted to the Guild of Magic, so that the mages could improve the potion formula according to the physique of the fish clowns and increase the vitality of the fish clowns. In a trance, the battle between Achi and the demons had become one-sided. Although there were many demons rushing out of the tower, they couldn't withstand Achi's crazy killing. In actual combat, spatial magic was much more powerful than elemental magic such as earth, water, fire, and wind. Moreover, it was cast by a supreme magic archmage. The number of demons has decreased. The clownfish devils have basically been cleaned up. Only the Naga devil is left. No, that's a mermaid devil. Etnia shouted, pointing ahead. Following the direction Etnia was pointing, List saw a huge demon. It was no longer in the shape of a mermaid. It had a huge fishtail, an upper body that was as black as ink, eyes that flickered with dark green flames, and a staff in its hand. At the top of the staff was a huge monster skull that looked incomparably evil. As soon as the mermaid appeared, it raised the skull staff and let out a hoarse roar. Then, a black luster emerged from the top of the staff and shot straight at Achi. Achi, be careful! Be careful, Your Excellency Achi! Without the warning of List and the mermaid, Achi had already noticed the mermaid devil. With a wave of her hand, a few cracks blocked the path of the black magic arrow. The next moment, several cracks in the spatial magic were corroded by the black magic arrow. At the last moment they were blocked by the cracks. But Achi waved her hand again and also shot a spatial magic arrow, which was a spatial crack, at the mermaid devil. Crack! The crack cracked, and a big hole appeared in the mermaid devil's chest. No blood flowed out, only dark green flames burning the wound. The mermaid devil's form was already similar to that of a ghost. The magic power of a ghost, because it was related to the soul, was either blue or green. Roar! The mermaid devil didn't care about the big hole in its chest. It still raised the skull staff and continued to release the black magic arrow. This was a high magic spell of the dark element, and it was very corrosive. Unfortunately, it encountered a sea archmage who used supreme magic. Seeing that one spatial magic arrow wasn't enough, Achi shot a few more. Crack, crack, crack. 4 arrows shot through the air and struck the mermaid devil, leaving 4 large holes in its body. Most importantly, there was also a large hole in its head. This time, the mermaid devil could no longer survive and sank to the bottom of the sea as a corpse. And the skull staff in its hand was seized by Achi, who controlled the water flow. After following List for a long time, Achi naturally learned how to drop equipment without any teaching. Watching the mermaid devil's corpse sink to the bottom of the sea, The mermaids who were hunting the lone devils opened their mouths wide again. "Your Excellency He is really amazing," as expected of the great Archmage. "If Your Excellency He could live in our era, I'm afraid the sea would have been purified long ago." "It's not too late now. With Your Excellency He's help, the sea will return to its original peace sooner or later. Unfortunately, there are only 7 of us mermaids left. After 300 or 400 years, I'm afraid there will really be no mermaid race in the world, and we will become a legend in human book. You have to think of it this way, Tibidas. We have already become legends, and now we have been saved by His Majesty and Your Excellency to fulfill our wish to purify the sea. Yes, we once lived by bathing in the glory of the sea, and now it's time to sacrifice for the glory of the sea. Your Excellency He is our hope, the hope to restore the glory of the sea." At this moment, the 7 mermaids sincerely ignited their confidence in life and made purifying the sea their goal for the rest of their lives. The sea gave the mermaids a noble status, and they took it as their duty to protect the ecology of the sea and maintain the order in the sea. Humans and nature should live in harmony. Mermaids and the sea should also live in harmony. Please remember the original domain name of this book. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 998. 3 mermaid demons were killed by a chi. With the help of the 7 mermaids, the rest of the Naga demons were also eliminated. A tower built by demons disappeared just like that. Only a thick layer of demon corpses was left at the bottom of the sea, as well as the thick aura of the cursed dragon. These corpses must be purified. Otherwise, the power of the cursed dragon will infect new demons, Etnia said. "We don't have enough materials to set up a purification magic circle. We can only leave the demon corpses here and see how the purification ability of the sea is. Maybe we can start with the tower. There must be a reason why so many demons built this tower. Bring the 3 mermaid demons' corpses. They are important research materials." After asking the mermaids to clean up the battlefield, List swam to a chi and said with concern, "You did very well in the battle. Your magic bombardment was great. If the Dragon Knight could also fight in the water, I'm afraid he wouldn't be as fast as you killed the demons." Yes, a chi also felt very happy. "Finally, I can test my combat ability." "How was the magic consumption in this battle?" "It's not a big deal. The magic net can support a chi's continuous extraction, but it's very exhausting. Now a chi feels a little tired. Then you have a good rest. The mermaids and I will check the tower." "It's okay, brother. A chi is just a little tired. It won't affect my research." She still insisted on checking the cause of the tower with them. She wanted to get first-hand information about the demons. The tower had disappeared, but there was a thick aura of the cursed dragon among the corpses and ruins. The mermaids dug up the ruins. Soon, Liz saw something that emitted the aura of the cursed dragon. It was a piece of rotten meat that exuded the aura of a supreme demon. Like the dragon claw formed by the rotten meat from the purification altar, it was made of special power. It's a supreme demon of the cursed dragon. Supreme demons like this must be distributed in every corner of the Devil's Sea. Only by cleaning them up can the sea be completely purified. Those demons gathered here to get the supreme demon of the cursed dragon's protection and continue to live. Don't worry. Take it slow. There will be a day when the sea is completely purified. After storing the rotten meat, the group began to return. He didn't continue forward. Encountering a devil's tower was already thrilling enough. He didn't want to encounter another one. The mermaid's body had not recovered, and a chi was mentally exhausted. As for List, all he could do was cheer them on from the bottom of the sea. Back at the offshore laboratory, a chi and the mermaids immediately threw themselves into the study of the devil. List took the youngest mermaid, Bluebosi, to Estuary City. His plan was to build a big city in the shallow sea near Estuary City as the residence of Yucho. Then, through the management of the mermaids, the clowns gradually joined the territory's labor force, engaging in construction, marine farming, and the like. Of course, the specific arrangements would be handed over to the Development Committee. He himself did not have the patience to deal with too specific mundane affairs. Di Maria, regarding the arrangements for the mermaid and the ugly fish, I'll leave it to you to preside over. My father is in the Blue Sky Mountain Palace helping the Sapphire family prepare for the funeral. I will also rush over in a few days. Discuss the work of the Development Committee with Emily. In the future, I will hand over the marine work to Emily's jurisdiction. In the administrative office of Reed City, Liszt was instructing Di Maria Rain Flowerstone. Among his most trusted followers, Emily undoubtedly had to take on more important tasks. The work with the mermaids would be handed over to her in the future. However, Emily now needed to learn how to manage such a large territory. Di Maria would be a qualified teacher. Also, he was prepared to let Blabossi and Emily get along for a while, and then finally give Blabosi's mermaid heart contract to Emily. There was no point in having so many mermaid hearts for himself. In any case, he could only sit on the shoulders of the mermaids at the bottom of the sea and cheer 666. Understood, Your Majesty. Di Maria was still in a state of shock. Ever since he had come to the Fire Kingdom, he had encountered one shocking event after another. He had seen a sacred dragon, a unicorn, a phoenix mistaken for a fire dragonbird, and had passed through a magical teleportation matrix. Each was enough to shock him for a long time. Now there was the addition of the shock of the mermaids. Also, don't forget to hire a few serpentine teachers for the mermaids. They don't speak the official language. Yes, Your Majesty. Di Maria saw Liszt get up and hurriedly stood to send him off. He also asked somewhat faintly, Your Majesty, did the mermaids really rule the sea? Who knows? Anyway, I am the master of the sea now. You must remember this. Don't be too humble when dealing with the mermaids. I will watch my attitude. Leaving the administrative office, Liszt then went to the Guild of Magic and saw the executive vice president. Chris, I have a task to entrust to the Guild of Magic. Your Majesty, please instruct me. Kenley should have already sent you a message. I have recruited a new batch of mermaid followers, and have obtained millions of ugly fish as laborers. I have already heard, Your Majesty. I would like to be transferred to the marine laboratory and see the mermaids with my own eyes. It is a great honor to be by your side, Your Majesty. I can see so many beautiful things that only exist in legends, dragons, unicorns, mermaids. There will be plenty of time to meet the mermaids in the future. Now I need you to gather a group of mages who are relatively proficient in the source of vitality potion, and then arrange for them to go to Estuary City to collect samples. I want the mages to research a source of vitality potion that is suitable for the ugly fish's physique. Does the ugly fish have a fertility problem? Chris asked curiously. Yes, it is precisely because of the difficulty of the ugly fish's reproduction that the dense number of ugly fish in the sea in the past gradually disappeared. If I don't interfere, the ugly fish may really be extinct in a few hundred years. I will arrange for the mages to go to Estuary City to collect samples to study the source of the ugly fish's vitality. After handing over the task and checking a batch of the latest research topics of the Guild of Magic, Liszt returned to Firewood Castle. Then he saw the calabash sprite who was throwing a tantrum. Master, I have already asked the Marquis to come and confirm that this calabash sprite is evolving. Its body is developing very well, and the possibility of successful evolution is very high. The old butler, Carter, said happily. Liszt had not lived in the castle for a long time, and these elves were taken care of by him like children. He was full of affection for each one. He was sincerely happy for the evolution of the calabash sprite. Budgie budgie. The calabash sprite stood on Liszt's arm, expressing its recent troubles. It hated the big evil elf in the castle. Liszt couldn't help but pat its head. Remember this feeling, when you evolve successfully, you can resist Ella's oppression. He actually wanted to laugh a little. He didn't expect Ella to really trigger the catfish effect. The calabash sprite was the first elf to be stimulated to evolve in the catfish effect. Budgie Budgie. Since you are about to become the great calabash sprite, you should have your own name. Now that you are very angry, it is better to call you the Knight of Wrath, Klein. Chapter 999. The evolution of the gourd sprite, Kale, was gratifying. However, it still made List feel a little regretful because it was not a potion sprite or a grain sprite that evolved, but a gourd sprite. In this world, the gourd was similar to the gourd on Earth, and it could also produce small gourd. Now, the role of the small gourd was to be fried when it was tender and could be used as a vegetable. The other was to hold wine when it was mature and could be used as a vessel to hold liquids. However, there was not much potential for both uses. The gourd output as a vegetable was low, and the gourd volume as a water bottle was small. Forget it, it's enough to evolve into a big sprite. Everything else is just a passing cloud. List hugged Kale very intimately. At this time, there was a whoa sound. Kale suddenly jumped out of List's arms and stared at the thorny sprite, Ella, floating at the door. He kept shouting at List, Budgie, Budgie. This was a call for help. Ahem. List motioned for Kale not to be nervous, and then waved to Ella to come over. Ella, with her hands behind her back, flew over arrogantly. List, this sprite is not obedient and is destroying everywhere in the castle. You have to teach it a good lesson. You can teach it, but you can't hit the sprite. It just told me that you hit it a few days ago. List was looking forward to Ella's catfish effect, but fighting was not allowed. The scolded sprite may be angry and evolve, and the beaten sprite may be useless. I didn't hit it, whoa. Ella glared at Kale and then said to List, I just scared it. Now that I am a big sprite, I have to show my dignity to manage so many sprites. Ahem. List had nothing to say. He didn't know where Ella came up with such strange ideas. Ella's thoughts were not over yet. List, help me prepare a set of frack Abby. I will wear clothes in the future. Why do you want to wear clothes? Callie and Yaddy are both wearing clothes. As the elven butler, I naturally have to wear clothes. Very well, I will have a tailor make a suit of flack Abby for you according to your figure. But if you want to be the elves' butler, you must pay attention to your behavior in the future, because your every move will be an example to the elves. Ella snorted, I understand. The days in the castle did not last long. When March first arrived, the crop seedlings in the farmland gradually turned green. After meeting up with Achi, List took the soul of the sapphire dragon to the Blue Sky Mountain Palace. The funeral would be held in a few days. Emissaries from the Blast Furnace Fort, Iron and Steel Ridge, and Eagle Country had all arrived to offer their condolences to Grand Duke Andrew. Among them, the head of the emissary delegation of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom was List's old friend, Mashu Red White Rose. After the banquet, she found List again and exchanged feelings in private. Your Majesty List, you are 21 years old this year. The development of the Fire Kingdom is fierce, and everything is on the right track. I don't know if you have begun to consider personal issues? Mashu, my friend, thank you and the Red-White Rose family for your attention to me. I very much hope to establish a closer friendship with the Red-White Rose family. But now the construction of the territory is complicated. I hope to wait until the Fire Kingdom is established 3 years later before considering my personal issues. Wait for 3 years? 2.5 years. My followers and I agreed to establish the country within 3 years. Now there are still 2.5 years left. Mashu thought about it. Her sister Marilyn was 16 years old this year, and she hasn't had her birthday yet. After 2.5 years, she would only be 18 or 19 years old. In that case, I won't ask more. However, my sister Marilyn will have her coming-of-age ceremony in 2 months. She hopes to get your blessings, Your Majesty. Sister Marilyn's coming-of-age ceremony? I will definitely send my blessings. In addition, I also brought you some gifts. How can I accept this? It's just a little gift from the Red-White Rose family. Thank you very much. Liszt smiled and accepted the gifts brought by Mashu. There was no doubt that it was another batch of platinum potions and red dragon water. The Red-White Rose family was so generous. And he also prepared some gifts in return: a white paper tribute paper and glass handicraft. The value was not great, but it was very precious abroad. Mashu was very satisfied with Liszt's gift. Just as Liszt didn't care about the tribute paper and glass, he didn't care about the platinum potions and red dragon water, because the Red-White Rose family couldn't consume so many potions. Instead, they valued the tribute paper and glass handicrafts very much. In short, both of them felt that they had taken advantage of each other, and felt that the other party was really generous. This friendship became deeper and deeper, and they talked until midnight. Did Mashu give you another batch of precious gifts? Did Father also receive Mashu's gifts? In a guest room of the Blue Sky Palace, Liszt and the Marquis of Oxdale had a rare time to chat together. Lee William nodded and said, "Mashu is very generous. She gave me a batch of platinum potions." Indeed generous. What did you think about it? I told Mashu that I don't think about personal issues before the country is founded. In fact, I think Marilyn is a very good choice. Of course, you are the king. You make your own decisions. I won't interfere. So the topic stopped there, and quickly changed to a new topic. Lee William asked, "I received a magic message from Di Maria. I have learned about the mermaids. Liszt, you bring the glory of the night again." He held the teacup and felt very strange in his heart. He should have been very surprised by the appearance of the mermaids, but when he received a message from Di Maria, he was unexpectedly calm. It was like hearing that a little elf had evolved into a big elf. There was a surprise, but everything was so natural. Encountering the mermaids was an accident. I didn't expect there to be 7 mermaids and millions of ugly fish left in the sea. So, the legends about the mermaids are all true? If Father is referring to those very beautiful descriptions, I can only say that they are exaggerating. In fact, the mermaids are equivalent to the magicians and great nobles of the sea. Just like humans, they fight each other out of desire and enslave large numbers of nagas and ugly fish to work for them. Lee William nodded. Since these 7 mermaids have offered their hearts to you, does that mean that their loyalty is guaranteed? More or less. The mermaid kingdom has long perished, and because of some pollution problems, they have lost their ability to reproduce and can't continue to reproduce the next generation of mermaid. I think they don't have the ambition to continue to dominate the sea. Liszt said with some emotion. He quite hoped that the mermaids could regain their ability to reproduce and continue to reproduce in the sea. After all, they were a magical species, and after leaving the mermaids, it would not be easy to control the ugly fish. When the Guild of Magic finished researching the source of vitality potion for the ugly fish, perhaps he could try to get the Guild of Magic to help the mermaids research the source of vitality potion. Just as his thoughts were jumping around, Lee William let out a long sigh and said with emotion, "Ever since I left Coral Island, I realized that there are so many magical colors hidden in this world. If there is really a night's glory, I think the night's glory must be concentrated on you, my son, Liszt Flame." Liszt returned to his senses and smiled slightly. Perhaps, if the power of fate represented by the smoke dragon was a kind of night's glory, then the night's glory really favored him. Chapter 1000. The funeral of Grand Duke Andrew was held on March 6, a drizzle falling from the sky. The customs here were not popular with funeral culture. After death, people were buried in the ground, and there was no annual worship at a fixed time. According to Grand Duke Andrew's last wish, he was buried around the Sapphire Dragon's lair. The Sapphire Dragon was his most cherished hope. At this moment, under the treatment of a chi, the sapphire dragon had merged with the part of its dragon soul that had been taken away. It lay in the dragon's lair and looked at the ant-like humans. It lined up in front of the grave of Grand Duke Andrew. A trace of undetectable sadness flashed in the dragon's eyes. Although the dragon was arrogant and looked down on humans, it had a direct soul exchange with Grand Duke Andrew, and they had lived and died together. Some memories were destined to be hard to forget. So it turned its head, stopped watching the funeral, and closed its eyes to sleep silently. After the funeral, everyone dispersed. After saying goodbye to his good friend Mashu Red White Rose, List also returned to Flame Island. In Fire Castle, he saw Ella, who had put on a small frack abier, swaggering with her hands behind her back, her transparent wings flapping, and slowly inspecting the whole castle. The big sprites could ignore Ella, but the little sprites were very afraid of Ella's overbearingness. After seeing her, they all hid in their worm houses. The sprite worms didn't know what fear was, and the buckwheat dragon elf Yachty, who stayed in the castle, also turned a blind eye to Ella. Ella also turned a blind eye to Yachty. It really couldn't beat Yachty, and it was a level lower. Wow, List, the little elves are doing well. After seeing List, Ella quickly flew over and reported the work with great pride. List was generous with his praise. Well done, Ella. Ella immediately straightened her chest. Of course. She had a mischievous look. After teasing the sprites for a while, the old butler Carter came to report. Master, Her Excellency Mary has returned from abroad and is resting in Fire Castle. She hopes to see you as soon as possible. Well, send someone to inform her to come over. Yes. After the invitation, Mary Dawn quickly arrived at Firewood Castle and walked into List's study room. Have a seat, List said casually as he flipped through a newly published night. Thank you, Your Majesty. The blood servants have worked hard during this period of time. They have been running around the 3 kingdoms and collected a lot of valuable information for me. List personally poured a glass of red wine for Mary. He did not like to drink, but pouring wine for his followers was a way to show that he was close to the Lord. Mary was very touched as she accepted the wine cup. The blood servants are very motivated to work for Your Highness. Moreover, it is an unparalleled honor to participate in the establishment of the Fire Kingdom from scratch. They exchanged a few pleasantries. List cut to the chase. Mary, did you find out anything about the Vulture family? He had previously sent Mary to the Blast Furnace Kingdom in person to investigate the Vulture family, which was the family of Stephanie Vulture, the original owner of the magic I Chi technique. Mary took a sip of red wine and replied, Your Majesty, the Vulture family died out more than 100 years ago. According to the information I investigated, the last patriarch of the Vulture family was close to the Sapphire family. Because the Sapphire family left the Blast Furnace Kingdom, the Vulture family was ready to follow. In the end, they did not leave and soon perished. No one knows why. Perished? List frowned. Have you heard anything about Stephanie Vulture? I have. He was the last patriarch of the Vulture family. His title was the Earl of Wind Thunder City. However, no one remembers Earl Stephanie's deeds. I have been to the original castle of the Vulture family. The castle was occupied by another Earl family 100 years ago. Is there any other relevant information worth mentioning? I heard from a local old aristocrat that the heir of the Vulture family did not die in the disaster of the Vulture family. Instead, he became a destitute person. He wrote a book about the Vulture family and later disappeared. Mary said and took out a book from her bosom. But there are remnants of that book that have been passed down. It was a tattered, moldy, and decayed book made of thick bast paper. It was so dilapidated that half of it had decayed. List slightly opened a page. It was written in the language of the Blast Furnace Kingdom, rock text. I can't understand it. Mary seemed to have known this a long time ago. She explained, I've asked the old nobleman. The book's name is Vulture Knight Stephanie's Expedition. It's basically about Stephanie the Vulture's expeditions. It's very boring and has nothing worth mentioning. Vulture Knight Stephanie's Expedition. Liszt looked at the Broken Rock textbook and frowned. When he first obtained the Magic Eye Chi secret technique, it was Vulture Knight Stephanie's Expedition, but it was published in Serpentine. There was a golden paper recording the Chi secret technique hidden in the cover. The cover of the rock textbook in his hand had long decayed. It was obviously impossible to hide the golden paper recording the Chi secret technique. He had a big doubt in his heart. Why was there no Chi secret technique hidden in the rock text edition? Instead, it was the Grand Duchy of Sapphire thousands of miles away that published the same book with the Chi secret technique in the cover. Unfortunately, too much time had passed. The Vulture family had long become the dust of history. It was no longer possible to know what happened to this family. Liszt could only guess as much as possible. He guessed that Stephanie Vulture was too close to the Sapphire family and was implicated after the Sapphire family rebelled against the Blast Furnace Kingdom. The family perished. Stephanie's son happened to be a family and published a book recording his father's night. Sales were poor. Forced to make ends meet, the son crossed the Steel Ridge Kingdom and went to the Sapphire family. When he arrived at the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, he might have been rejected by the Sapphire family, or for some other reason, not prospering. Thus, when he was in dire straits, he put the two secret techniques into two books, one of which was Vulture Knight Stephanie's Expedition, and the other was Searching for the Magical Beast Insect King of the Pincer Beetles. He looked forward to the fated person obtaining the Chi secret techniques and recreating the glory of the Vulture family. Driven by the power of fate, these two books fell into Liszt's hands. As a bookmarking madman, Liszt certainly smiled and accepted it. In any case, he was basically certain. Magic eyes and aura attenuation, these two Chi secret techniques should only be possessed by me. They can be inherited by the Flame family. Of course, Magic Eyes already had the wizard version of the super magic eyes. A Chi taught the 7 mermaids, who would later search for sprite worms in the sea. In that case, should I also teach the Magic Eye to my loyal followers and let them help me collect elves? The news of the Vulture family's destruction that Mary brought made him suddenly realize that Chi's secret techniques were just insignificant skills. Even if an aristocrat mastered this Chi's secret technique, they would not be able to rise to the ranks of a dragon-raising family. The true foundation of dragon-raising families was dragons. The Flame family had 6 dragons. In the hands of a dragon-raising family, especially when practiced by a dragon knight, Magic Eyes could display its true value. Chapter 1001. The source of vitality potion targeted at the physique of the ugly fish was finally completed at the end of April after repeated research by the Guild of Magic. After taking the source of vitality potion, the fertility rate of the ugly fish race suddenly increased by 300%, and a large number of female ugly fish entered a state of pregnancy. This meant that the ugly fish race would soon usher in the hope of recovery. At the same time, Liszt also let the Guild of Magic start to study the fertility problem of the mermaid, aiming at the physique of the mermaids, to see if they could eradicate the curse that caused them to lose the ability to conceive the next generation. Mission completed. Reward, Magic Cloak. With the problem of the ugly fish's fertility solved, the smoke mission was naturally completed, and the reward item immediately came to Liszt's hands. Unsurprisingly, this item was obtained from the newly conquered Moonkiller tribe and was part of the seal in the statue of the Moonkiller tribe's ancestor. The ancient book of knowledge's appraisal result of the magic cloak was Drow Spider Silk, Mushroom Mycelium, Infinite Magic Protection. After a cheese analysis, the two materials of Drow Spider Silk and mushroom mycelium were spider silk produced by a strange race of drow spiders in ancient legends, and mycelium mixed with a large number of abandoned worms. This magic cloak could provide unlimited magic for the wearer and condense a magic protection halo. There was no doubt that this was another piece of mage equipment, and it was the most suitable for a chi. The newly rising knight training system had no ancient treasures waiting to be unearthed. If he wanted good equipment, he could only make it himself. A chi who wore the magic cloak could condense a protective shield that emitted misty light around her body. Even if List used the super demonic dragon aura, it would take 3 attacks to break it. This undoubtedly greatly enhanced a chi's defense, coupled with the power of her own magic. In the battle, she was almost invincible. In the future, a chi would be the main force to purify the sea devils. With this magic cloak, List could finally rest assured and cheer her on. For the next few days, he had been studying the new smoke mission. Mission: Assassin walks in the shadows. The malice from a distant country has arrived at Flame Island and is watching all your results from the island. In order to avoid malice leading to bitter consequences, you should take the initiative to find malice from the shadows. Reward: Underwater's secret realm. He didn't have to worry about the rewards for now. What made him frown was the evil intentions of the distant nation. It was obvious that a certain country had sent assassins to Blazing Island and had been hiding in the dark to spy on everything. However, Blazing Island was simply too big. The population alone had already reached 2 million. There was also an endless stream of Moonkiller tribes that were completely absorbed by the Knights and integrated into the kingdom. It was extremely difficult to find the assassin among so many people. Back when he was in the Flower Town, the town was only so big, so it was very easy for him to find the invisible Paris. Now, even if List rode the invisible dragon and activated the crystal white orbit vision, he still wouldn't be able to find the assassin. His magic power was scattered too widely, and it was easy to get dazzled. The only thing we can do now is to lure the snake out of its hole. Should I let the Guild of Magic announce the results of their research, or let the Development Committee announce the convening of an important meeting? Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. He thought of a new way to lure the snake out of its hole. The mermaids have already joined the territory, yet only a few people have seen them. Why don't I hold a title ceremony in Estuary City, officially confer titles upon the mermaids, and then lure the assassin out? Everyone would want to see a miraculous creature like the mermaid. As long as the title ceremony was maintained in the upper echelons of the territory, it would be easy to find the assassin who wanted to spy on the mermaids. Perfect. With the plan in mind, he quickly issued an order to the Development Committee to hold the title ceremony in Estuary City. At the same time, he contacted 7 mermaids with their respective duties to rush to Estuary City to participate in the title ceremony. May 3rd. The weather was pleasant. The news of the title ceremony had spread throughout the territory. Many commoners and lesser aristocrats were talking about the mermaid. However, they were not allowed to go to Estuary City to participate in the title ceremony. Only a few upper echelons would show their faces in Estuary City. At noon that day, in the mangrove forest of Estuary Swamp, a group of great aristocrats gathered at the temporary title ceremony built by Fish Clown, excitedly guessing the situation of the mermaids. List rode the invisible dragon bard, invisible in the sky above the scene. Crystal white orbit was activated, carefully identifying the magic around the scene. Since it was an assassin, there must be magic or chi. As long as he found the unfamiliar one, he would be able to lock onto the assassin. The time quickly approached. The mermaids had arrived at Estuary Swamp and began to appear. Their huge bodies and beautiful figures attracted all the attention of the aristocrats as soon as they appeared. And at this moment, List found that there was suddenly a special magic in the crowd. This magic was black magic of the dark attribute. It did not condense into a human form, but hid in the shadow of a great aristocrat. He suddenly remembered the introduction of the smoke mission, assassin walks in the shadows. So it turns out to be able to merge into the shadow. This strange ability is probably the shadow incarnation of the ancient warriors. Liszt had never given up on searching for information about the ancient warriors, so he had some understanding of the profession, shadow incarnation. At the moment, he locked onto the magic in the shadow. He rode the invisible dragon and swooped over, then unleashed the wanton dragon's might, violently attacking the shadow incarnation. He jumped off the dragon's back and directly jumped out of the material boundary. He then reached out to grab the locked onto shadow. With a pull, he had already pulled out a blurry humanoid creature from the shadow of a Moonman Viscount. The dragon's chi surged, and the blurry humanoid creature was forced to reveal its true form. It was a short, naked man. Clatter! Before the aristocrats could react, Liszt had already taken out the orichalcum shackles and cuffed the naked man, locking the magic in his body. He then threw it to the knight beside him. "Keep an eye on him, Your Majesty, Your Highness." Only then did the aristocrats react and exclaim, "Don't be nervous. We just found an assassin. Count Geoffrey, take him away. We will continue with the conferring ceremony." Liszt waved his hand, indicating that the conferring ceremony would proceed as usual. Although the aristocrats were full of doubts, Liszt had already spoken, so they continued with the conferring ceremony. During the ceremony, Liszt personally conferred titles to the mermaids one by one. Marquis of the Fishermen, Gulvig. Marquis of the Great West, Etnia. Marquis of the Salt Water, Bureposi. Marquis of the Water, Tibidus. Marquis of the Trench, Sheriwala. Marquis of the Fugitive, Viswendi. Marquis of the Lost, Coelic. The titles of the other mermaids were fine, but the titles of Viswendi and Coelic were really inelegant. However, their original countries of the sea, one was called the Fugitive Country, and the other was called the Lost Sea. Even she did not mind, so Liszt would not mind. With the mermaids pledging their loyalty, the conferring ceremony ended hastily. Liszt signaled the aristocrats to communicate with the mermaids on their own, while he hurriedly left to interrogate the origin of the shadow incarnation. Chapter 1002. There was no need for Liszt to remind him. The shadow incarnation's interrogation methods had already been used. After some physical pain, the short assassin finally confessed everything. His name was Heathley Shadow, an inheritor of an ancient warrior, shadow incarnation. He came from the great empire in the far west, the noble Frost Empire. He was sent to the Fire Kingdom by the Emperor of the noble Frost Empire, Great Emperor Jupiter, to investigate the news of the Holy Dragon, the Invisible Dragon. We have 5 shadow incarnations, all lurking in various parts of the Fire Kingdom. However, a week ago, one shadow incarnation left with news of the Invisible Dragon. There are still 3 shadow incarnations left. I don't know where they are hiding. I will investigate the information in Estuary City. How do I contact them? Every week, we meet in a tavern in Dragon Valley City to share information. There are still 3 days until the next meeting. Liszt narrowed his eyes. He finally knew why the smoke mission had not been completed even though he had caught this shadow incarnation. It turned out that there were still 3 shadow incarnations lurking in the dark. Furthermore, one of the shadow incarnations had already left Flame Island, and there was no way to catch him. The noble Frost Empire. A serious thought flashed in his mind, but he immediately suppressed it. He continued to interrogate Heathley Shadow. First, information about Heathley's personal profession. Shadow incarnations were one of the ancient warriors. They did not cultivate chi or magic power. All practitioners had dark magic power. Unlike mages, they could integrate dark magic power into their bodies and transform them. This allowed their bodies to blend into all shadowy environments through a special method. We were originally Earth Knights. After displaying dark chi, we were chosen by the royal family and began to cultivate into shadow incarnations through special means, engaging in assassination, investigation, and other work. I can tell you the specific cultivation method, but in the process of transforming chi into magic power, we need to soak in medicine several times. I don't know the formula of the medicine, Heathley said. This basically cut off List's idea of cultivating shadow incarnations. However, this was very normal. Since the royal family of the noble Frost Empire had mastered the method of cultivating shadow incarnations, they would definitely hold the medicine formula tightly and would not leak it at will. After all, there was no guarantee that the shadow incarnation would not be captured and reveal the cultivation method. My power isn't that great. I belong to the deep shadow of the shadow incarnation. Shallow shadow, deep shadow, and shadowless respectively correspond to the Earth Knight, the normal Sky Knight, and the perfect Sky Knight. Heathley was a deep shadow, which was equivalent to the normal Sky Knight. His most powerful assassination method was to jump out from the shadows and assassinate. He might not be able to defeat the Sky Knight in a head-on battle, but he could even kill a sword saint with a sneak attack. However, the shadow incarnation was not without its limitations. Their clothes could not blend into the shadows. Thus, before spying, they would hide in the shadows in the corner. When the other party was unprepared, they would jump into the other party's shadow naked and follow him. After the assassination, he had to leave the scene naked, find his clothes, disguise himself as an ordinary person, and disappear into the crowd. Then, can't you go anywhere at night? List asked, puzzled. Heathley smiled bitterly. It's not easy to assassinate at night, because the shadow state will be too dark, and I might not even be able to find my assassination target. When I blend into the shadows, I can only rely on the boundaries of the shadows to move, and rely on the light outside to sense. Once there was no light, the shadows would have no boundaries, and he would not be able to figure out how to move, so he would get lost. This explanation was very logical. Otherwise, wouldn't the shadow incarnation be able to kill whoever it wanted at night? It would be completely lawless. After understanding the occupation information of the shadow incarnation, List began to understand the information of the noble Frost Empire. Heathley, who had suffered, was very straightforward and answered every question. I don't know how Great Emperor Jupiter knew about the invisible dragon. I'm just a shadow incarnation, and I've only seen Great Emperor Jupiter a few times. The orders were given by the leader of the shadow incarnation. Great Emperor Jupiter is called Great Emperor Jupiter, and after becoming emperor, he is a person without a surname. A person without a surname? The emperor has no surname, because surnames can no longer bear the glory of the emperor. List smiled and continued to interrogate. Then what's the family surname of Great Emperor Jupiter? The Light of Tranquility. What does the Light of Tranquility have? I don't know. How old is Great Emperor Jupiter? He was suddenly very concerned about this question. He wanted to know the age of the emperor to determine if the other party was the Lord of the Dragon territory. I don't know, but I guess Great Emperor Jupiter is 40 years old. Through the conversation with Heathley, List quickly outlined the image of Great Emperor Jupiter. He was 40 years old, in the prime of his life, a dragon knight, riding an elemental dragon or dark dragon. The dragon was as black as ink, with a body length and wingspan of more than 70 meters. Great Emperor Jupiter had once personally led the orders of chivalry to destroy a principality and vassal state, and killed the other party's dragon. He could be considered a monarch. The noble Frost Empire spoke of the Chai language. Heathley spoke a few words, which sounded a bit like the language of the moon. The written rules were like pieces of firewood stacked on top of each other, giving the feeling of cuneiform. However, Heathley could also speak Serpentine. These shadow incarnations were trained to speak multiple languages from an early age, and were sent to different countries to carry out missions. The empire was very large, and wars were frequent on the border, especially with the Empire of Light. A war would break out every few years, and the Dragon Knight would often launch a dragon-slaying war. I don't know how many dragons there are in the Empire. I've been performing assassinations in the mercenary city-states for a long time. The mercenary city-states are composed of many small exiled countries. They are located between the Empire, the Fallen Leaf Kingdom, and the Whitestag Kingdom. They are very chaotic and the holy land of mercenaries and rat. Heathley could not explain the geography of the legendary continent. He only knew that the mercenary castle bordered the noble Frost Empire, the Fallen Leaf Kingdom, and the Whitestag Kingdom. After receiving the order from the Shadow Incarnation leader, he and the other 4 Shadow Incarnations set off from the mercenary city-states and headed east. After passing through the Fallen Leaf Kingdom and the Blast Furnace Kingdom, they arrived at the Eagle Kingdom, and then sailed to the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. They then inquired about the road to the Fire Kingdom, and followed a caravan into the Fire Island. They began to disperse and spy on the situation of the Fire Kingdom, focusing on investigating the invisible dragon. The Empire has many vassal states, all grand duchies and duchies. The imperial city is built on a mountain, and the whole mountain is the city. There is a spring at the top of the mountain that flows through the entire imperial city. After listening to Heathley's description of the noble Frost Empire, List suddenly asked, "Does the noble Frost Empire have archmages?" "Yes." Chapter 1003. Thank you, Boss Zhang-Gu, for your 150,000 Qidian coins. Lao Bai is so lazy, but you're still willing to support him. Thank you. Thank you to the readers who are still following the original version and voting for Lao Bai. I'm sorry to everyone with the current update rate. The Frost Empire had a magic shooter. This was not surprising to List. Although the 3 kingdoms had not had a magic shooter for many years, the legendary continent was vast and there were more than tens of millions of mages. There would always be powerful mages who could access the magic net and become magic shooters. Heathley Shadow had never seen the magic shooter of the Frost Empire. He only knew that this magic shooter was appointed as the chief magic consultant of the royal family. He did not know the name of the magic shooter. Even the Frost Empire has a magic shooter. The other 2 empires must have magic shooters too. There's also the Elemental Dragon Knight. I'm not the only one who can ride the Fire Dragon Leo. The great Emperor of the Frost Empire rides the Dark Dragon. The strength of the countries in the legendary continent cannot be underestimated. List was quite emotional about this. In the living room, listening to him, the Marquis Oxdale said, "List, the focus now should not be on whether there are magic shooters in the legendary continent, but the purpose of the Frost Empire. The great Emperor of Jupiter sent the Shadow Incarnation to investigate the invisible dragon. Obviously, he wants to target the Holy Dragon. We must be careful. Father, please rest assured. I won't take it lightly. The Fire Kingdom is located in a remote corner, very far from the Frost Empire. Even if the great Emperor of Jupiter wants to target Bard, I will let him understand the principle of a powerful dragon cannot suppress a local snake." List was very confident about this. The smoke mission would provide him with warnings at any time. The power of fate had always been on his side. The Frost Empire had just released its malice, and the smoke mission had already helped him to remove it. He had already arranged the next action. With the help of Heathley and the other Shadow Incarnations, he was ready to capture the remaining 3 Shadow Incarnations in one fell swoop. As for the Shadow Incarnation that had already left, he could only watch it leave. However, if there were more Shadow Incarnations coming next time, He would ask Chi to lead the mages of the Guild of Magic to set up a scouting magic array at the entrance and exit of the teleportation portal to quickly find unknown intruders. Of course, with the development of the Fire Kingdom, there wouldn't be any secrets that needed to be kept strictly. So what if the mermaids, unicorns, and orichalcum dragons were exposed? Even the invisible dragon was exposed, so it wouldn't be surprising if a few more mystical creatures were exposed. Furthermore, he had the Devil Foundation communication method, allowing him to communicate through long distances. But this didn't mean that the other countries didn't have it. Most of the information about the Fire Kingdom had already been exposed by the rat. The only reason why the Fire Kingdom was still safe and sound was probably because the other countries had yet to figure out how to deal with the Fire Kingdom. The Kingdom of Eagle was ready to show weakness to the enemy. They were indeed weak now. The Steel and Iron Ridge Kingdom was ready to draw people into marriage. The Red and White Rose family was obviously the Platinum family. King Osborne could not allow the Red and White Rose family to associate indiscriminately. The Blast Furnace Kingdom had only expressed their goodwill and hadn't made any clear moves yet. The two countries were too far apart, so the Fire Kingdom wouldn't be able to affect the Blast Furnace Kingdom in the short term. Once the development of the Fire Kingdom affects the core interests of the three kingdoms, the dragon-slaying war might still happen. It was just that he did not expect the noble Frost Empire to intervene. To be honest, this brought a certain amount of pressure and urgency to List. After all, the noble Frost Empire had the elemental Dragon Knight and magic shooters. Their combat power was absolutely not to be underestimated. He was not afraid of any kingdom, but he might not be able to compete with the Empire. It should be known that a kingdom had several Dragon Knight, and an empire had at least a dozen Dragon Knight. It was not impossible to have more than 20. With such a number of Dragon Knight, List could be drowned by the Dragon Sea tactic. The only consolation was that the noble Frost Empire was not friendly enough with the surrounding countries. Every few years, a war would break out with the Unsetting Light Empire. It was impossible to send the Dragon Knight to cross tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of kilometers to find trouble with the Fire Kingdom. At most, they would secretly plot some schemes. From the information of the Shadow Incarnation investigating the invisible dragon, it could be known that Great Emperor Jupiter was interested in the Holy Dragon. It was likely that he would set up some schemes against the invisible dragon Bard. Fortunately, Bard is about to reach adulthood, and with the help of Chi and I, he has completed the control of space travel in advance. He may not be strong enough in a head-on battle, but no dragon or dragon knight can stop him when he escapes. List had always been concerned about Bard's growth. Most of the newly harvested red dragon water was given to Bard in a biased manner. 3 days later, in a tavern in Dragon Valley City, 3 shadow incarnations, unaware that their identities had been exposed, walked into the tavern like ordinary people and met up with Heathley Shadow. Just as they were about to exchange the information they had gathered, List personally acted. His supreme demonic dragon chi surged, and he forcefully captured the 3 in an instant. Then, he took out the orichalcum shackles and locked them up. After another round of questioning, he obtained more information about the noble Frost Empire from the 3 shadow incarnations, Rudolph Shadow, Cassio Shadow, and Barrett Shadow. Although it was not comprehensive enough, he finally had a preliminary impression of the distant empire. A warlike empire, and a warlike emperor. The national power was not comparable to the Unsetting Light Empire and the Blue Dragon Empire, but its combat power was not inferior at all, and it had a strong suppression on the surrounding countries. It is not a good thing to be targeted by such an empire. The Oxdale Marquis was still very worried. List did not say much. He would deal with the situation as it came, and that was all. After he finished interrogating the shadow incarnations, the smoke mission was immediately completed. Mission completed. Reward: Undersea Secret Realm. At the same time, a new mission was issued. Mission: the malice brought by the shadow incarnations is just the beginning. No one can guarantee whether this is a test or the beginning. However, to forge iron, one must be strong. The development of the Fire Kingdom is the most important thing. Please build a second magic transmission array. Reward: a greater sprite. Another greater sprite as a reward. With the rapid development of strength, the reward level of the smoke mission had increased too much. Ordinary lesser sprites could not be used as a reward, and greater sprites were equivalent to sprite worms in the past. The smoke mission had already rewarded several dragons and dragon clues. The new mission was to build a second magic transmission array, which had been confirmed to be a transmission array from the Jade Mountain to the legendary continent. It would be used to contact the Snowwind Mountain Principality and expand the trade channels of the Fire Kingdom. However, Achi was not free for the time being, so the magic transmission array had to wait for a while. He also took this opportunity to rest and not be busy with the smoke mission all day. He was a person who controlled his fate, not a person who was pushed by fate, although he was often pushed by fate. At this time, the reward for the previous mission, the Undersea Secret Realm, was quickly obtained. The mermaid Marquis of Great Western Etnia accidentally found a secret realm while searching for sprite worms in the deep sea. This secret realm was not a relic of the former Sea Kingdom, but a naturally formed underwater wonder. Your Majesty, the secret realm is very magical. It unexpectedly props up a dry area on the seabed without seawater, and there are flowers, trees, and land beasts living inside. So magical? Come, take me to see it. Chapter 1004. Except for the fugitive Viswendi, who was working in the laboratory on the sea, and the saltwater Marquis, who was building a city on the sea at the mouth of the Whirlpool River, the other 5 mermaids all dived into the sea with List and swam toward the secret undersea realm. Achi was concentrating on studying the demons, so she did not follow them. The location of the undersea secret realm was in the Shell Sea, located in the sea between the Blazing Islands and the third island. The mermaids' swimming speed was not slow, and they successfully reached the undersea secret realm after a few hours. The depth of the water was about 800 meters, and the light was a little dim. However, the secret realm was like a huge crystal cover that enveloped the entire seabed, flickering with a faint 7-colored light. Nia stopped in front of the bubble. Right here, Your Majesty. There's nothing special about this bubble. However, there is a strange force blocking the seawater outside. I tried to squeeze the seawater, but I couldn't squeeze the seawater into the cover. Etnia, have you ever entered the Undersea Arcanum? Asked Gulvig, the Marquis of the Fishermen. I didn't go deep. I only walked a short distance at the edge of the secret realm near the bottom of the sea. It's too troublesome to walk with a fishtail. Mermaids had noses and gills behind their ears. They could breathe underwater or in the air. However, mermaids did not have legs and could only rely on their tails to walk. Not only did they not walk fast, but their tails were also severely damaged, so mermaids almost never went ashore. In this aspect, the sea demons had a great advantage. Both they and the mermaids were favored by the sea. The mermaids were powerful, but the sea demons could go ashore. You guys wait outside, I'll go in and take a look. List had a blue bone dragon totem on his face and a fire dragon totem on his chest. After leaving the sea, his strength would definitely return to its peak. Moreover, he could also transform into a phoenix, so he didn't need to worry about the dangers of the secret realm. He took a step forward and squeezed into the secret realm from the sea. Immediately, a slightly damp and fragrant scent assaulted his senses. It was a little like the scent of a primeval forest. However, the environment here was completely different from a primeval forest, or rather, the land. There were no green plants, only various kinds of strange glowing plants. Some were green, some were yellow, some were blue, some were red, and there was a myriad of colors. There were only a few plants that did not emit light. They are all primitive ferns, fungi, lichens, and the like. Occasionally there are a few larger plants that look like small trees. Liszt strolled around the arcane dungeon. The ground was very wet, and there was some wet soil everywhere. There might even be rotten leaves. The secret realm was very big. Previously, when observing from the sea, he could feel that it was at least as big as Flower Town, maybe even bigger. At the very least, he couldn't see the end of the secret realm. However, when he raised his head, he could see the world at the bottom of the sea. There were even fishes swimming on the seven-colored barrier. This made Liszt very worried that the fish would fall from the bottom of the sea, but it was obvious that he was worrying too much. After watching for a while, not a single fish fell. If they could really fall down, the secret realm would have been filled with fish corpses. Taking out a knight's longsword, Liszt began to clear the messy plants in the hidden realm, cleaving a path to the depths. When he cast magic eyes, he didn't see any mana retroaction, which meant that these were ordinary plants. However, the natural light emitted by the plants would interfere with the judgment of Liszt's magic eyes. He looked at the sky and felt that the space was big enough, so he called out the little fire dragon Leo. At this time, Leo had a wingspan of 50 meters and a length of 50 meters. It was already a behemoth. Roar! It let out a domineering roar and placed Liszt on top of it, instantly entering Dragon Knight mode. When he cast Dragon Eye Orbit, the world suddenly became exceptionally clear and colorful. The color discrimination quickly reached saturation, and it was easy to distinguish which was the mana retroaction light and which was the natural light emitted by the plant. At this moment, the dragon's eyes swept across the ground and immediately found the light of mana retroaction. 3 of them were the relatively ordinary light of chaos, and only one of them was extremely dazzling with blue and white light. This could be the light of water retroaction, but it was a little different from the supreme magic on Achi and the mermaid. Don't worry, let's check out the 3 ordinary lights first. He rode Leo straight to the nearest chaotic light. He jumped down. Soon, he discovered that it was a plant breeding a sprite worm. The sprite worm was hiding behind the leaves and sleeping. The worm stalk was a bit similar to that of a banana tree's leaf. It had no flowers, only a short and thick rhizome and 5 large leaves. There were also a few similar plants nearby. Unfortunately, they had no magic power and were not magic ingredient. Liszt quickly contracted the sprite worm, and then let it continue to sleep on the leaf. There were no animals in this small secret realm, so the sprite worm was very safe. He then rushed to the second and third places. There were sprite worms in both places. One was a strange big flower, while the other was a seemingly bare small tree with leaves and a trunk. They were not magic ingredient. After the contract, Liszt did not take the sprite worms with him and let them live on their own. The sprite worms could not be too far away from the worm stalk. He was going to find a way to transplant the 3 plants onto land. If not, the sprite worms seemed to have no value in development. After the ordinary chaotic light was dealt with, he quickly rushed to the center of the secret realm and approached the place that was emitting the blue-white super magic light. He was surprised to find a piece of gray-white bone exposed on the ground. The blue-white light was emitted from the bone. The bone was huge and looked like the tailbone of some kind of creature. It should be a dragon tailbone? Liszt's heart suddenly shook, then glanced at Leo's tail, compared the bone, and speculated that the dragon was a little bigger than Leo. Did I find the remains of another dragon? Let me excavate it and see if I can find mineral deposits. Excitement lingered in his heart. A dead dragon was also a very valuable treasure. A thought flashed in his mind. The Great War of the past should have been centered on the Flame Archipelago, so there are so many dragon remains on this archipelago and the surrounding sea. Black Horse Island was the remains of a fire dragon. Heart Island was the hind legs of an emerald dragon. Flame Island was the remains and mineral deposits of the titanium dragon, blackheart dragon, lead dragon, bronze dragon, and mercury dragon. The entire sea was still filled with the pollution of the cursed dragon. Now a new dragon's remains were found in the Sea of Shells, and even the super magic had not subsided. Obviously, the sea blocked the air and slowed down the loss of the super magic on the dragon's remains. Winnie, come out and help dig the mineral deposits. He called out. The bone dragon Winnie, and then human dragon Unite entered the mind and soul Unite link. Both man and dragon were shocked. Driven by a wonderful and comfortable feeling, the bone dragon moved quickly and dug along the tailbone with its dragon claws. As the excavation went deeper, the dragon bones were revealed little by little, but the mineral deposits did not appear. List could not help but think, what kind of dragon's remains are these? Is it the remains of an elemental dragon? What kind of element would it be? Water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, light, ice, darkness? Chapter 1005. If this was the remains of an elemental dragon, then it was clear what kind of elemental dragon it was. The blue and white supreme demon on the remains was undoubtedly a water supreme demon. In other words, this dragon's remains were most likely left behind by a water dragon. Wow, there are no mineral deposits at this depth, which means it's not a metal dragon or a gem dragon. As for a holy dragon, it should be impossible, let alone an evil dragon. So it's the remains of a water dragon. List speculated. As for why the remains of a water dragon could support a secret realm without water, he couldn't figure it out for the time being. The soil of the secret realm was very soft, and it was easy to dig with the bone dragon. After a few hours of work, he dug a pit of hundreds of meters and dug out the entire skeleton of the water dragon. All the bones had fallen apart, but with his understanding of dragons, he could still put all the bone fragments together. Judging from the skeleton that was pieced together, this water dragon had a slender body and the longest neck of all known dragons. Its overall length was 85 meters, and its wingspan was 90 meters. It was larger than a light dragon with a wingspan of 80 meters, but smaller than a fire dragon with a wingspan of 100 meters. The size of a dragon was not the standard to judge its combat power, but usually, the larger the body, the stronger the combat power. The water dragon's combat power was obviously very strong. The supreme demon is still in the dragon's bones. The degree of decay of this remains is much less than that of the fire dragon on Black Horse Island. Looking at the skeleton full of magic, List's heartbeat accelerated again, and his breathing became rapid. The fire dragon can be reborn with the help of the remains. Why can't the water dragon? His eyes flashed brightly as he looked at the skeleton and took a few deep breaths. He slowly calmed his restless emotions. Now, I just need to find a way to revive the water dragon. I have the experience of successfully reviving the fire dragon, so I can do it again. Or I can give it to a chi. After all, it was related to an elemental dragon of immeasurable value. List was willing to believe in a chi's ability, rather than fumbling around ambiguously. To be honest, List still couldn't figure out why the little fire dragon Leo could be born. Ever since he taught a chi everything he knew, he was too lazy to use his brain to do research. He left everything to the professionals to study and just waited to receive the result. He knocked on the keel. The supreme dragon demon in the bone shook. It seemed to be nurturing life in the magic power, just like the few big bones left of the fire dragon. He left the secret zone. List quickly followed the mermaids back to the laboratory on the sea. He then told a chi about the remains of the water dragon in the secret realm. A chi quickly stopped her research on the demon, or rather, the cursed dragon. She had been analyzing the power of the cursed dragon recently. He was on the verge of coming up with a brand new category of magical elements, soul. Water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, light, ice, and darkness were recognized as the 8 basic magic elements. Some mages believed that the magic of the metal dragons, or even the magic of the gem dragons, was the metal element. Some mages believed that the magic of the elves was the wood element, or the natural element. The magic of the druids was similar. In addition, spatial magic belonged to the formless dragon, while time magic belonged to the dusk dragon. The smoke dragon represented fate, the emerald dragon represented the mind or dreams, and the fairy dragon represented life. It was unknown if they were considered the concepts of magic elements. Now, Achi's research on the power of the cursed dragon allowed her to gradually unify her understanding of the soul. She believed that the soul could be regarded as a special magical element, the soul element. Curses were an application of the soul element. Others, such as liches and ghost ships, were all branches of the soul element. Brother, the soul element is still different from ordinary magical elements. After all, the soul is related to the spirit, and it is the third foundation of the world besides matter and magic. Achi swam in the sea while communicating with List. The resurrection of the fire dragon should be because you accidentally touched the soul element. Hearing you say that, I suddenly remembered that no matter how I hit the remains of the fire dragon, it didn't work. However, when I used the materials on the ghost ship as fuel, Leo was soon born. It seems that the most important thing to resurrect the elemental dragon is to have the participation of the soul element. Yes. Now that we don't have the materials for the ghost ship, Achi, how do we deal with the soul element? Achi smiled playfully. Brother, have you forgotten? Achi has been studying the power of the cursed dragon every day, and I have collected a lot of pure soul element. If the principle of the water dragon's resurrection is the same as the fire dragon's, I can definitely use these soul elements to resurrect a little water dragon for you. Hearing Achi's confidence, List was elated. Haha, when you resurrect the little water dragon, I will have the 7th dragon. Moreover, this dragon was a water dragon among the elemental dragons, so it would definitely have no problem swimming in the sea. It meant that once he rode the water dragon, he would be able to roam the sea freely. As the water dragon knight, he would not be limited to the sky. She came to the center of the secret realm. Achi quickly studied the skeleton of the water dragon on the ground. She studied it for a day and a night. Finally, Achi came to a conclusion. The remains of the water dragon are full of supreme magic, but like the remains of the fire dragon, the soul element has been exhausted. Now, as long as I inject the soul element and resonate with it, the remaining vitality of the fire dragon will be resurrected. In fact, the theory behind it was very complicated. Achi's short explanation was just to make it easier for List to understand. How do I cooperate now? Brother, you just need to trigger the supreme magic resonance of the dragon. Achi will inject the soul element collected during this period of time, and then use an amplification magic array. I believe the water dragon will soon be resurrected. In fact, the elemental dragons are very magical. They should have considered the problem of resurrection before they died, and have long stored their vitality in the depths of the skeleton. Understood. So Huichi began to collect the materials for the magic array. Although List had nothing to do, he did not idle around. He tried to collect the 3 arcane realm plants named Earth Banana, Nameless Flower, and Bear Tree, and planted them on the ground. The planting was naturally taken over by the mages from the Guild of Magic to find a suitable planting environment. Just like that, the weather turned hot in the middle of May. List stood in the center of the magic array that had been set up, accompanied by the remains of the water dragon. Achi stood at the side, holding a large glass bottle with faint smoke rolling inside. It was the pure soul element collected from the cursed dragon and other sources. Achi, are you ready? Yes. Then let's begin. List took a deep breath. The supreme magic dragon's combat energy circulated, and he began to knock on the remains of the water dragon, causing the supreme magic dragon to vibrate. The vibrations grew stronger and stronger, and soon reached the level of resonance. At this time, Achi pulled out the stopper at the mouth of the bottle, and poured out the soul element. The next moment, the supreme magic dragon had already begun to resonate. In that instant, a miraculous reaction occurred rapidly. The supreme magic dragon seeped out of the dragon's bones and fused with the spreading soul element smoke, forming a small blue and white dragon in the form of magic. The little dragon let out a baby cry, and then plunged into List's body. Boom! The miraculous telepathy rippled in List's mind. He quickly felt a friendly little beast burrowing into his abdomen and hiding in his left kidney. However, the little beast did not seem to feel very comfortable and quickly moved to the right kidney, but it still did not feel comfortable enough. Then, it split into two, one staying in the left kidney, the other in the right, and connected the two parts through magic. This time, it let out a happy cry. Chapter 1006. He was in a trance. List was still in disbelief after the little water dragon entered his body in the form of magic power. For the countless night classes in the legendary continent, dragons were rare legendary creatures. However, he revived another elemental dragon from the secret undersea realm as a reward for a smoke mission. Although the process was complicated and consumed a lot of resources, it was easier than getting a big elf. It was so easy that it felt unreal. Of course, I can't think of it that way. I'm now an invincible six-headed dragon knight with the help of 7 mermaids and Achi, an invincible magic shooter. Reviving the water dragon is a piece of cake. If it were any other big noble, even the dragon-raising family or the emperor, I'm afraid it would be difficult to revive the water dragon. He was very emotional about this. This was probably the reason why the rich got richer and richer. Only with money could one keep making money. An ordinary person with $1,000 could only earn a few $100s at most. A rich person with $10 million could earn tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars with interest in the bank. In terms of luxury in the ocean, List was confident that he could beat the emperor. However, his emotions didn't last too long. At this moment, his body was already in a mess. The bone dragon Winnie occupied the head and didn't care about it. However, Leo, who occupied the heart, had already threatened the little water dragon that occupied the kidneys. The little water dragon cried out aggrievedly and complained to List. "Leo, calm down. You've grown up. Be gentlemanly." List had to appease it. Roar! Leo couldn't calm down. If it wasn't for the fact that it hated water element supreme magic, it was ready to swallow the little water dragon, just like it tried to swallow the phoenix. In the concept of the evil dragon, supreme magic creatures of the same level were either enemies or food. The only reason why peace could be achieved was because it couldn't be defeated. Fortunately, Leo's evil thoughts were suppressed by List's soul brand. After List assured it that he would provide it with enough fire dragon water, it calmed down. However, its magic was still mixed with List's dragon combat and suppressed the magic of the little water dragon. The little water dragon shrank in its kidneys and didn't dare to move. It conveyed the emotion of, "I'm so scared," to List. Although they were both evil dragons, the water dragon was much friendlier and more intimate. It didn't have as many evil thoughts as Leo. "Big brother, has the little water dragon awakened?" Achi looked at the dazed List and asked. Only then did List come back to his senses from comforting the fire and water dragons. A bright smile appeared on his face. "Everything's done. The little water dragon is still in its magic form for the time being. I'll need to raise it for a while to let it absorb enough water element magic to evolve into a body of flesh and blood." "That's good. The supreme demon, Achi, can provide it with water. I believe it will grow up soon. I'll have to trouble Achi to take care of the little water dragon from now on." Achi is very willing to take care of the little water dragon. While they were talking, the rainbow-colored light shield above his head suddenly trembled and began to shrink inwards. The seawater surged over violently and exploded. Not good. Without the support of the water dragon's supreme demon, the secret plane is going to collapse. Liszt was suddenly alarmed. Although he couldn't figure out how the water dragon's supreme demon could support a bubble without water, it was clearly not something he needed to think about right now. He quickly said to Achi, "Achi, clean up the remains of the water dragon. I'll go collect the sprite worm stalks and collect a batch of plants of the same genus to cultivate on land. Otherwise, the 3 sprite worms will surely die along with the disappearance of the secret plane." Okay. Achi quickly gathered all the dragon bones together and froze them with eternal ice to prevent them from being washed away by the seawater after the collapse. Liszt quickly took the 3 sprite worms, collected the worm stalks, and pulled out a large number of plants of the same genus to tie them up. Once everything was done, more than half of the rainbow-colored light shield above his head had already collapsed and its brilliance had already dimmed to the point where it was almost invisible. Finally, under the watchful eyes of Liszt and Achi, the rainbow-colored light shield burst like soap bubbles. Rumble! Under the powerful pressure of the seawater, the secret plane was flattened in the blink of an eye, as if a mountain was pressing down. The strange luminous plants instantly turned into powder. Apart from the batch Liszt had collected earlier, there was nothing left. "Let's go, Achi." Liszt and Achi stood on the ice condensed by the dragon bones, merged into the seawater, and then drove the ice away from the secret plane that had already disappeared. Looking back, even the excavated pit had disappeared. There were no longer any clues to prove that a water dragon had passed away here. Even without the supreme demon, the remains of the water dragon were still valuable and important materials. Liszt did not continue to pay attention to the research of the luminous plants, which was pinned on the wizards of the Guild of Magic. He placed the 3 sprite worms, the banana, the nameless flower, and the bear tree, back in Firefire Castle. Whether the 3 sprite worms lived or died depended on whether they could simulate the plant-growing environment. Achi returned to the laboratory at sea to study the power of the cursed dragon. Once she summarized and perfected the soul elements, she would construct the second teleportation magic array. Leo also returned to the crater of the endless volcano and continued to sleep in the magma. Without Leo's suppression, the originally well-behaved little water dragon finally no longer had to be afraid. Compared to Leo, who had sprouted from a magic fire seed, because of the many supreme demons left in the remains, it directly skipped the magic fire seed stage and possessed magic power, form, and intelligence. Yo! It cried out that it was hungry. Liszt swallowed a lot of magic potions, but because he himself was a fire element warrior, which was very different from the water element of the little water dragon, the amount of magic he could provide for it was very little. "Don't worry, I may not be able to keep you alive, but I won't be short of water magic. Wind, fire, water, earth, thunder, light, ice, and darkness, these magic elements did not have the concept of mutually reinforcing or restraining each other. In this world, fire and water were not opposite. To put it bluntly, these magic elements were composed of basic magic particles, and the different motion properties of magic particles led to their different physical properties. To a certain extent, magic power, matter, and spirit could all be interchangeable, not to mention the different nature of magic elements. Many Dragon Knight magic power did not match the nature of the dragon, but it did not prevent the dragon magic power and the dragon's combat energy from merging with each other. Therefore, Liszt's fire combat energy could still provide nutrients for the little water dragon. However, it was inefficient and not worth it. He went to the mermaids and prepared to borrow water attribute supreme demons one by one. He could not only trouble Achi. The first one he went to was Etnia, the Marquis of Great Western. "Etnia, you know that I have a little water dragon to raise, So can I borrow some water attribute supreme demons from you? Of course, Your Majesty. I am very willing to provide magic power for the growth of the water dragon. Etnia agreed without hesitation and was even very happy. Mermaids hated cursed dragons, but they still had a very good impression of other kinds of dragons. So, he held Etnia's fingers with both hands. The 20-meter-long mermaid was too big, and even one of her fingers was as thick as List's thigh. The little water dragon sensed the water attribute supreme demons on Etnia and immediately cheered, crazily devouring Etnia's supreme demons. Gulp, gulp. There seemed to be the sound of drinking water as the little water dragon greedily devoured every trace of the supreme demons. Seeing this, List said to Etnia, "You don't need to provide too much. When you feel that you have enough and feel uncomfortable, tell me, and I will stop the little water dragon. Don't worry, Your Majesty. I don't lack super magic. Mermaids can absorb it from the weave." "Oh, I can't, Your Majesty. I can't maintain my super magic anymore. The little water dragon's devouring power is too strong." Atenia's face turned pale. List quickly cut off the little water dragon's magic power to stop it from devouring. Roar. The little water dragon let out an angry emotion, and an evil thought that was similar to Leo's kept growing. Chapter 1007. Control your anger, little water dragon, or I'll call Leo back. List didn't like this kind of evil thought. He didn't expect that the little water dragon would also have evil thoughts. Moreover, this evil thought was comparable to Leo's evil thought. It was a wise decision to classify an elemental dragon as an evil one. Roar! The little water dragon shivered when it heard Leo's name, but it quickly controlled its anger and didn't dare to show any evil thoughts. List looked at Etnia, whose lips had turned pale. "How do you feel now? Did the supreme magic break down?" Etnia took a deep breath and calmed down. "Thank goodness Your Majesty cut it off in time, or I would have been seriously injured by the little water dragon. I thought the mermaid's strong body could support the little water dragon's absorption of supreme magic. I didn't expect the little water dragon to be so powerful at birth." Etnia was still shaken by the powerful devouring ability. This showed the difference in power between a mermaid and a dragon, even though they were both supreme magical creatures. "I'm sorry. I didn't expect the little water dragon's devouring ability to be so strong. Of course, it might have something to do with you not recovering to your best state," List said gently. "Go back and rest. Your health is more important than anything else. Let's do something after you recover." "Understood, Your Majesty." Etnia smiled bitterly. "But I'm afraid we mermaids can't help you raise the little water dragon. Mermaids can't satisfy its devouring ability." "Okay. I'll take my time. There's no hurry." The mermaids couldn't withstand the little water dragon's devouring ability, and List didn't dare to let a chi provide water element supreme magic. He didn't want to see a chi get hurt. But a chi said, "Brother, the mermaids can't provide magic because the little water dragon not only devours supreme magic, but also the unique supreme magic that makes up its body. Just like the tail feathers of the fire dragon bird, that's a special form of soul and magic. That should be the case. Unfortunately, there's no water element treasure like the phoenix feather that can speed up the little water dragon's growth. A chi can do it." The High Mage laughed. "Big brother, don't forget what a chi has been researching recently. It just so happens to be the soul element. A chi can use the soul elements refined by the cursed dragon's power and combine them with the water element supreme demon to promote the little water dragon's growth." "Is that even possible?" "Yes." A chi nodded seriously. "Also, a chi discovered a secret information about the Dragon Knight in the perfect stage." List raised his eyebrows. "Oh, hurry up and tell me." He had long determined that once the Dragon Knight reached perfection, it would definitely involve the cultivation of the soul. However, He had never found any clues. He didn't expect that Achi would find this clue after studying the cursed dragon. The Dragon Knight, or dragon, is an existence that stands at the pinnacle of power. However, this peak of power still has its limit. To be precise, it's a kind of shackle. Achi calls it the barrier. A Dragon Knight at the peak stage will face the shackles of the barrier, unable to advance any further. Barrier? List didn't understand. Achi continued to explain, Big brother, you've seen the Weave Dragon, so you should know of its existence. It isn't bound by the current fixed space and time. Achi believes that it is a dragon that has surpassed the barrier. This barrier might be the boundary between matter, spirit, and magic. The Weave Dragon wasn't in the material world, nor was it at the boundary of the material world, nor was it in the world beyond the material world. However, it traversed all the worlds, from the material world to the boundary of the material world, and then to the world beyond the material world. The barrier that Achi was referring to was the boundary between matter, magic, or even the spirit. The barrier that the Weave Dragon had broken was the boundary between matter and matter. Matter, spirit, and magic. These three are the foundation of the world. Once the barrier of this foundation is broken, one will surpass the peak of power. Therefore, Achi believes that the next step of the Elemental Knight's cultivation system is the magic barrier, while the next step of the Metal Knight and the Gem Dragon Knight's cultivation system is the material barrier. Then what about the Holy Dragon? List asked. If it's the invisible dragon, it's obviously the material barrier. I'm not sure about the Dusk Dragon, and Achi can't explain the meaning of time. The Emerald Dragon is the dream and spirit, so it should be the spiritual barrier. The Smoke Dragon represents fate, but Achi isn't sure what fate is either. The Fairy Dragon represents life, so it's hard to say. If that's the case, if the Cursed Dragon advances a step further, it will also break the spiritual barrier. That might be the case. Of course, the above information on the barrier is only Achi's guess. Whether such a barrier exists or not still needs to be verified. As for the barrier, Achi could only make guesses. Therefore, regarding List's following questions. As for, will the Fire Dragon Knight become a Water Dragon Knight after breaking through the magic barrier? Will the Invisible Dragon Knight become the next Weave Dragon after breaking through the magic barrier? Will the Cursed Dragon be able to pollute the sea because it broke through the spiritual barrier? What kind of dragon did the Weave Dragon evolve from after breaking through the magic barrier? In short, for now, the barrier was just a concept. Even if List was fascinated by it, he had already named the next stage of the Dragon Knight's training system, Barrier Knight. It still couldn't determine whether the barrier really existed or whether the Barrier Knight was a viable training prospect. Returning to the topic of the Supreme Magic Supply, Achi quickly designed a set of magic arrays that could fuse Supreme Magic with Soul Element. Then, she personally provided the Supreme Magic. The little water dragon absorbed as much as it could. When the magic array was completed and activated, Achi used the water elemental incarnation to continuously absorb the magic from the weave. Then, with the help of Charlie the Unicorn, she became a supreme magic supply. List then released the restrictions on the little water dragon. The little water dragon roared and absorbed madly. There were no restrictions, but the supply of magic was always sufficient. Achi was also very relaxed from beginning to end. She didn't overdraft her body like the mermaids. It absorbed for a whole 10 minutes. The little magical water dragon suddenly roared and let out a series of burps. It couldn't absorb any more supreme magic supply. It felt sleepy and retracted its magic into List's kidneys. It began to sleep and digest the sumptuous meal. This is a good plan. The little water dragon should be able to cultivate it after 2 or 3 more times. Right, Achi, is the soul element refined from the cursed dragon's power enough? It's enough for 2 or 3 times, but it's okay. If it's not enough, I can go with the mermaids to the bottom of the sea to catch another batch of demons. A Chi who had single-handedly destroyed a devil's tower said this very casually. The demons that once covered the sea like ghosts were just magic materials to her. Well, it's best not to go to the Devil's Sea without being fully prepared. This time, we only encountered a devil's tower. If there are more demons, it will still be very dangerous. A Chi nodded. Understood. List rubbed a Chi's blue hair. Remember, this is just a little water dragon. Its growth is not as important as your safety. A Chi immediately narrowed her eyes like a kitten. Hee, big brother. A Chi is now more powerful than the Dragon Knight in the sea. Chapter 1008. Brother, do you still remember this black ring? After feeding the little water dragon, a Chi continued to chat with List. She was wearing a black ring on her finger. I remember, it's a divine tool of the ancient moon-killing mage. Why, have you already cracked its usage? List was surprised. According to the ancient book of knowledge, this black ring was a metal alloy, probably an alloy of a large number of unknown metals, and its function was equivalent alchemy. Not yet, but I have some clues. A Chi said, there are very few records about alchemy, but considering the conversion between substances, a Chi thinks that equivalent alchemy can be achieved, and this black ring is a tool to assist in alchemy. Then how does alchemy work? Brother said that substances are divided into very small particles, called atoms. Atoms are composed of nuclei and electrons, and atomic nuclei are composed of different protons and neutrons. They are very compact and difficult to change. The change of the properties of substances is caused by the atoms losing electrons or gaining electrons. Yes, I said that, but I don't remember which alchemist's remnant book I read. List was embarrassed. He did impart a lot of physical and chemical knowledge to a Chi, but he had forgotten all of it in the past few years. Now he couldn't figure out what the chemical reaction theory was. He only remembered what electrons were gained and what electrons were lost. So he couldn't help but ask, a Chi, did you find anything from this aspect? Well, the gain and loss of electrons in atoms only changes the temporary form of substances, not the essence. Brother said that the change of atomic nuclei is the real alchemy, which can turn substances from iron into gold. Well, did I say that? Probably. A Chi found that the function of the black ring is to stimulate the change of metals. It can accelerate the movement of the atomic nuclei of metals, so that the metal nucleus can be easily decomposed and recombined. Once a Chi fully grasps the method and theory, she can replicate ancient alchemy. Although List couldn't remember what atomic nuclei were, he only knew that nuclear fission and nuclear fusion could change chemical element. Nuclear fission was the principle of atomic bombs, and nuclear fusion was the principle of hydrogen bombs. Atomic bombs seem to use uranium to fission to produce barium and release a large amount of energy. Hydrogen bombs, on the other hand, used hydrogen isotopes such as deuterium and neptunium to produce helium and release a large amount of energy. But that didn't mean he didn't know the meaning of alchemy. A Chi, does it mean that once we develop alchemy we can really turn stone into gold? It's not a stone, brother. According to the black ring's equivalent alchemy ability, metals can change each other's nature through alchemy. It can turn iron into gold, or even magic metal. However, the meaning of equivalent alchemy might also include wear and tear. Attrition. For example, 10 portions of iron can only produce 1 portion of orichalcum. In terms of materials, the value of orichalcum is definitely far greater than the value of iron. He reacted quickly. Do all metals have a different price? That should be the case, but we still need to figure out the alchemy value of each metal. Right now, we still can't determine which metal is more valuable and which metal is less valuable. If we can figure out the price of metals, we can definitely make a lot of money by relying on alchemy. List's eyes were shining. He could see clearly. Judging from the current market price, the price of a ton of iron can't compare to the price of a kilogram of orichalcum. If we can refine a ton of iron into a kilogram of orichalcum, we can make money. If we can refine it into 10 kilograms, it will be a huge profit. If we can refine it into 100 kilograms, it will be a huge profit. A chi will derive alchemy as soon as possible. Don't be too anxious. You have too much work to do now. You have to learn to relax. We all have a long life to live anyway. It doesn't matter if we develop alchemy sooner or later. Liszt obtained the Phoenix incarnation, although he didn't know his specific lifespan. He had a feeling that his aging speed had been greatly slowed down. According to the Phoenix's 500-year reincarnation, he could definitely live for 200 or 300 years, or even reach the 500-year lifespan of the Dragon City Lord. Of course, contracting the fairy dragon was still one of his dreams. The little water dragon was sleeping, digesting the water element super magic that Tautai had obtained. Achi continued to study the power of the cursed dragon, preparing to summarize the soul elements in the near future. On the other side, the materials for setting up the magic teleportation array were also being collected. This time, it was an improved magic array. Its stability, comfort, and safety were far better than the heart-read teleportation array. Liszt was patrolling the territory. Now, with the influx of night class, there were more and more Moonkill natives under his control. He had basically completed the incorporation of the southeast half of Flame Island. Except for some small tribes hiding in the corners of the virgin forest, the other Moonkill native tribes all walked out of the forest and became the subjects of the Fire Kingdom. The Moonkill people were different from the African black people. Although they also lived a primitive life, they had a more upright attitude and were willing to work hard. It was probably because the forest of Flame Island was not as rich as imagined. In the land of Africa, there was too much food, leading to the African black people to develop a lazy character. In the forest of Flame Island, the Moonkill people had to fight against World of Warcraft and had to endure the winter hunger. After the tribe grew stronger, in order to better survive, they could only split into smaller tribes and migrate to farther places. Forced by life, the Moonkill natives developed the quality of hard working. With the construction of the Fire Kingdom as the center, Flame Island was divided into two halves, the southeast half and the northwest half. The Night of the Fire Kingdom had already opened up the northwest half. There were not many Moonkill natives in the northwest half, but there were still millions of them, and millions of serfs could be incorporated. Liszt stayed in the Fire Kingdom for inspection. More and more trained and experienced Moonkill serfs were arranged to work here. A large city designed to accommodate a population of 500,000 was rising from the ground. The palace on the nearby Holy Mountain also began to be built. It stood at the top of the mountain and integrated with the mountain. Coming from afar and complementing the Fire Kingdom, the entire blueprint was finally finalized after several revisions. The hinterland of the Holy Mountain was the lair of the bone dragon Winnie. The forest behind the Holy Mountain was the lair of the copper dragon Marta. Marta did not have much requirements for the environment, the main thing was to serve him well. The Jade Mountain was the lair of the light emerald dragon Isin, and the endless volcanoes was the lair of the fire dragon Leo. The lair of the gray-mouthed iron dragon Orn was still uncertain. He was flying aimlessly around Flame Island, preparing to find a place he liked and build a lair. The invisible dragon Bard did not have a fixed place and did not need a lair. In other words, the world outside the material world was his lair. As for the little water dragon, he did not even have a name, let alone a lair. At worst, he could just throw him into the sea, and the vast ocean would be his lair. By the way, riding on the invisible dragon Bard, he examined his own palace in the material boundary. If the royal city can be called the royal city of flames, then what should the royal palace be called? Sapphire's Palace is called the Blue Sky Mountain Palace, Steel Ridge's Palace is called the Platinum Tooth Palace, Eagle's Palace is called the Iron Dragon Chain Palace. Chapter 1009. I won't name it for the time being. After the founding of the country, I will definitely formulate a new set of titles, including the Holy Mountain, King City, and all the surrounding locations. For a while, there was no suitable name for the palace, so Liszt no longer struggled. After walking around King City and chatting with Marta for a while, he left and continued to inspect the progress of other projects in the territory. The violent dogs evolved green skin, white skin, and gold skin all successfully evolved into intermediate World of Warcraft Blizzard beasts. Although they were not yet adults, they could already mate under the stimulation of the bloodline fruit. The most surprising thing was the purple skin, which had failed to evolve. Although its physical development had been slow, it performed well in magic, and had mastered the advanced Earth Magic Rock cluster. Its pure melee combat power was not as good as the green skin, white skin, and gold skin, but its magic crushed these three. The only pity was that the purple skin seemed to have evolved into another species, which could not communicate with the blizzard beasts, and it was more difficult to reproduce. With the pregnancy of this batch of blizzard beasts, the formation of orders of chivalry would no longer be an extravagant hope. The Burning Legion would soon establish the Blizzard Orders of Chivalry after the Mammoth Orders of Chivalry. The problem of mounts for the Guard Orders of Chivalry had also been solved. The Flame Dragon Bird, Fire Raven, and Cardinal Bird were all qualified mounts. However, it was not easy to find a knight. There were not so many young Fire Elite Earth Knight and Sky Knight. Liszt did not look at an older knight. However, it took time to train a young knight. So far, no one had been selected for the Dragon Knight candidate program. There were only a few candidates, such as Durotan Red Apricot, Custer Windmill, Hippolyta, and other little geniuses who were studying at the Royal Academy. However, these little geniuses were still far from the Dragon Knight candidate program. In addition, the Fire Swordsman had not yet begun to execute. The little Fire Dragon Leo was not yet an adult, and he had no interest in wasting magic power to infect a few dragons. Unlike the traditional white dragon and black dragon that were infected by dragon magic power, the magic power would eventually return to the dragon. Once the Fire Swordsman was completed, the magic power would not return to the dragon. This was a losing deal. Leo was quite smart, and Liszt could not easily fool it. Unless the Phoenix Parasol Forest's monthly production of magic potions reached a bumper harvest and the Fire Dragon water could be supplied without limit, it would be difficult for Leo to cooperate with them. There was no enslavement relationship between the dragon and the Dragon Knight. It was merely cooperation. Even with the suppression of the spiritual imprint, it was just like an additional layer of marriage ceremony. The wife could stay at home to do housework and take care of the children, but if she really wanted to go out and have fun, there was nothing you could do. If Leo didn't cooperate, what else could Liszt do? He could only tempt him with benefits. I hope that the little water dragon won't be as evil as Leo in the future. Although my first dragon was Leo, I still think that the invisible dragon Bard is the best dragon. Bard was really easy to order around. He only needed to provide a little bit of smoke grass and endure the smell of the smoke grass from time to time, and he could perfectly satisfy any of Liszt's requests. Traveling through space never complained, and it didn't require much mana. A little red dragon water would suffice. At most, he would give it a fresh roast cow every few days. It was really easy to treat. As for the other dragons, the bone dragon Weenie didn't need to eat or drink, and the human soul made her more peaceful. The light emerald dragon Ethan was an alcoholic. Fortunately, Emily was taking care of him, so there was no need for Liszt to worry about him. The gray iron dragon On needed to eat and drink, and also needed to frequently replenish his mana. But once it found a suitable dragon nest, it would start producing iron ore. The orichalcum dragon Marta was somewhat unreliable. It was a freeloader and had a crafty taste, yet it was still unwilling to produce orichalcum ore. Without the suppression of the spiritual imprint, it didn't have a good impression of Liszt and was unwilling to infect the orichalcum ore. It might also be because the magic ingredients weren't enough, making it feel that infecting the orichalcum ore wasn't worth it. In short, it was impossible to produce ores from nothing. In the end, it still consumed the dragon's magic power. Raising a dragon to produce ores required countless magic ingredients, let alone raising 6 dragons. Now there were 7 dragons. After a few days of inspection, the construction of various places was in full swing. There was nothing for Liszt to solve. The development committee was doing a good job of managing Inferno Island. Liszt didn't even bother to go to various places to contract sprite worms. He could just let people raise wild sprite worms. The Moonslayer had a way to stimulate sprite worms to collect and release worm stock. Therefore, there was no difference between contracting or not. Soon, on the side of the Guild of Magic, there was the latest research progress on sprite worms. In the simulation of the growth environment of the 3 kinds of plants, banana, nameless flower, and bear tree, the first batch of plants was successfully raised. These plants were asexual and needed to be cultivated in a dark greenhouse. Planting them was very difficult, and the value of the plants was still being developed. But in any case, the 3 sprite worms finally had hope of survival. At the same time, the little water dragon was still asleep. Achi had already finished her research on the soul element. Do you need to rest for a few days? No need, big brother. Arranging the magic transmission array is not tiring at all. Moreover, for Achi, this is a form of relaxation. Thus, under the urging of the little siren, the new magic transmission array arrangement officially started. The starting point was at the foot of the Jade Mountain, only 1 kilometer away from the Jade Stone City. The end point was at the endless primitive jungle of the legendary continent, the Eagle Kingdom and the Yellowstone Kingdom. It was less than 100 kilometers away from the Snowstorm Mountain Principality. This place was a flat jungle. The trees had been burned by Liszt, leaving only charred soil and bumpy muddy ground. Realgar City, Realgar Plains. One day, this place will become the bridgehead for the Fiery Kingdom to set foot on the legendary continent. The empires and kingdoms on the continent will tremble in fear. Looking at the barren, charred muddy ground, Liszt sighed in high spirit. He called this place Realgar Plains. The meaning of the name was taken from the Eagle Kingdom and the Yellowstone Kingdom. It also had a deeper meaning of annexing the 2 kingdoms. During the day, he arranged the magic array. At night, he rode the invisible dragon bard and returned to Fire Castle. In this way, 3 days passed in a flash. Accompanied by a cry in his mind, the little water dragon woke up from its slumber. Its magic power was even more vigorous. As soon as it woke up, it was clamoring for food and drink. He had no choice but to let Achi arrange the magic array to provide it with supreme magic. After eating the supreme magic, the little water dragon burped and fell into a deep sleep again. Actually, it's quite easy to raise a dragon. I just need to let it eat its fill. I'm just afraid that when the little water dragon grows up, it will be difficult to feed it. For example, Leo often didn't have enough to eat and couldn't drink the fire dragon water to his heart's content. After the magic array was set up, it was Liszt's turn to ride the invisible dragon bard. Under Achi's command, they tore open the natural node and connected the magic array. Just like that. At the beginning of June, the brand new Realgar City Jade Mountain Teleportation Array was officially opened. There was no warm celebration ceremony. Only the first batch of Night Yevich Water Peanut and the others passed through the magic array. They stood at the foot of the Jade Mountain and looked at the rising Jade Stone City in the distance. After 2 years, they finally set foot on the land of the Fiery Island and returned to their future kingdom. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 10:10. Your Majesty, is this Jade City? Are these the Moonkillers? I thought Flame Island was still a barren land. Even if it was developed for more than 2 years, the environment would not change. I didn't expect Jade City to be so huge. Yevich Waterpeanut sighed. Although he had been captured and followed List for a long time, he did not have much experience in big battles. He did not know List's strong organizational ability as the successor of socialism. It would take several years for any lord to open up a piece of farmland. But Yevich insisted on doing it quickly and paid the serfs enough to grind stones into sand. Moreover, it was just burning the forest, opening up farmland, building wooden houses, and the ancient sorcerer presiding over the big project. Jade City's current scale was far larger than a large city with a population of 100,000. It was just not as luxurious as a large city, but in terms of civilization and hygiene, it was far better than any large city. Toilets, sewers. These were the standard buildings that List emphasized. A city could have no magnificent buildings, and it could have no small wooden houses, but it must not have no toilets, and no sewage could flow. Now that the majestic Jade teleportation circle has been completed, and the construction of majestic Yellow City has begun, the Snow Wind Duchy is in constant civil strife. The battle between the eldest prince and the second prince is white-hot. Some knight must have been defeated because of this. You need to contact more people and try to recruit them. Your Majesty, please rest assured. I have been planning this, but I only contacted some small nobles. Although the Duke of Snow Wind Duchy is old and muddle-headed, he will still be vigilant against outsiders interfering in the battle between his sons. If I go too far, it will easily attract the old Duke's attention. Don't be afraid. The Fire Kingdom is behind you. If the old Duke dares to make a move, tell him that if something happens to you, I will send a Dragon Knight to intervene in the internal affairs of the Snow Wind Duchy. Still in the name of the Eagle Kingdom? List thought for a moment. You can play the role of a broker between the Eagle Kingdom and the Fire Kingdom, engaging in serf trade or some other trade. At the critical moment you can show your cards. In short, if the Snow Wind Duchy cooperates with us, both sides will benefit. If not, they will be hurt. Even the noble Frost Empire wanted to attack the Fire Kingdom, so List did not care about the hostility of a small duchy. His strength was enough for him to run amok in the northeast corner of the legendary continent. Quest completed. Reward, a great sprite. After the construction of the Xiongyu teleportation array was completed, the smoke mission was naturally completed. The reward was a big sprite, but it was still unknown where this big sprite came from. List did not pay too much attention to it. His attention was now focused on the new smoke mission. Quest: the Greysteel Duke has returned to the Greysteel Duchy. Although he has lost the Greysteel Dragon, he is still in control of the country. However, his emissary group has already secretly headed towards the Fire Kingdom, bringing along another request for your help. This is also an opportunity. Please help the Greysteel Duke. Reward: aluminum dragon cable. Aluminum dragon clue. He instantly understood why the Greyiron Duke had used the orichalcum thread in exchange for his 20 years of protection. It turned out that the Grey Iron Duke, Piero Greyiron, still had clues about the aluminum dragon. He must be secretly attacking Aluminum Dragon and preparing to rely on it to stabilize the country. But what does he mean by asking me for help? Does he want me to help him conquer the Aluminum Dragon? Isn't he afraid that I'll just snatch the Aluminum Dragon? Bah, isn't he afraid that I'll snatch it? When it comes to riding a dragon, friendship doesn't matter. It belongs to whoever can snatch it. In any case, List had already decided on the Aluminum Dragon. He had never heard of an aluminum dragon in the northeast corner of the legendary continent. Aluminum was an ordinary metal. However, just like titanium was known as Little Mithril, aluminum was known as Little Crystal. It was a material used to make high-end magic equipment. It had great effects on conducting magic power and solidifying magic runes. The aluminum dragon was not as valuable as the magical metal dragon, but it was still a high-value dragon among the metal dragons. If the Grey Iron Duke obtained the aluminum dragon, he would definitely become the wisest monarch of the Greysteel Duchy. "It's a pity that you came to me for help." List and the others did not panic. Almost 2 hours after the mission was announced, he received a message from the Soul Fortress. A person claiming to be the emissary of the Grey Iron Duchy wanted to see him. "Let him come. I will meet him at the Reed City Administrative Office." List wanted to know what the Grey Iron Duke needed his help with. Soon, List met the emissary of the Grey Iron Duke at the Reed City Administrative Office. The emissary was a handsome young sword saint with yellow hair and green eyes. The emissary of the Grey Iron Duke, Lawrence Lulaw, greets the Flame King. "Dispense with the formalities. Did the Grey Iron Duke send you here secretly for something important?" List always liked to be straightforward. He did not like hypocritical politeness. Lawrence took a while to adapt to List's style, and then explained why the Duke of Greyiron had sent him. A knight trained by His Highness the Duke of Greyiron was kidnapped by the Kingdom of Eagle. He may be the illegitimate son of His Highness the Duke of Greyiron, so His Highness hopes to ask your Majesty for help. Illegitimate son. Does an illegitimate son need my help? List said in a mocking tone. What price does the Grey Iron Duke think can get me to help? The Grey Iron Duke is willing to offer 5 big elves. 5 big elves, but you want me to take the risk of entering the Eagle Kingdom? That's not the case, Your Majesty. The one who kidnapped the knight was not the Eagle royal family, but a feudal marquis. However, this feudal marquis is an inheritor of an ancient warrior and is very powerful. He knows that the Grey Iron Duchy does not have the protection of a dragon, so he does not care about the Grey Iron Duchy. It was obvious that Lawrence was not telling the truth. He thought that List was too naive. An illegitimate son, no matter how outstanding, would not be worth the price of 5 big elves to save him. If he really had 5 big elves, he could just exchange them with the feudal marquis. Moreover, even if the Grey Iron Duchy had a grudge with the Eagle royal family, the Eagle royal family might not care about the dignity of a vassal state and ignore it. Moreover, the Grey Iron Duchy could ask for help from other duchies. He believed that those duchies would be very willing to earn 5 big elves. It was impossible for them to come here directly and ask List to rescue the illegitimate son. Moreover, the smoke mission had already given clues about the aluminum dragon. List would not believe this excuse no matter how stupid he was. "Lawrence, don't say this useless nonsense. What does Duke Piero mean? Tell me in detail. Otherwise, go back quickly. I won't keep you for dinner." Chapter 10-11. Lawrence hesitated for a moment before saying through gritted teeth, "Your Majesty, to tell you the truth, that knight is indeed His Highness' illegitimate son. His name is Florenza Winchester. He's attacking a dragon, an aluminum dragon. He's almost at the stage of a spiritual battle." List raised an eyebrow and narrowed his eyes. "Aluminum dragon? Yes." At the critical moment of conquering the aluminum dragon, the Marquis of the Boulder found out, so he captured Florenza and wanted to obtain the aluminum dragon through him. His Highness did not dare to mention this to anyone, but he trusted Your Majesty's character, so he wanted to ask for your help. If he really believed it, Lawrence wouldn't have spouted nonsense and tricked List like a fool. He had no choice but to reveal the truth now. List didn't immediately respond to the request for help, instead changing the topic. "The Marquis of the Boulder, the one in the bearskin?" He remembered that the Lord Yevich Waterpeanut had followed was the Marquis of the Boulder, an ancient warrior who was about as strong as a domain knight. Yes, the Marquis of the Boulder, Pilaf the Boulder. He's an ancient warrior, yet he wants to ride a dragon? Are you sure he can? He has many children, 2 of whom are extremely talented and train in Night Chi. They've both participated in the Dragon Knight plan, but didn't succeed. The entire story was clear between the questions and answers. Piero's illegitimate son, Florenza Windchaser, was quite talented and was about to succeed with the aluminum dragon, but was intercepted by the Marquis of the Boulder, Pilaf the Boulder. The funny thing was, no matter if it was Piero or Pilaf, the 2 great nobles with the surname Pi, they didn't dare to say anything. If they did, it wouldn't just be them fighting for the aluminum dragon. Any noble who could ride a dragon wouldn't let go of this opportunity. However, the Greymouth Iron family had lost their dragon, and their battle strength was greatly reduced. They couldn't crush Pilaf at all, and naturally couldn't get Florenza back. So Piero thought about it and finally thought of Liszt. He thought that he was a follower of Liszt, and the aluminum dragon was located in the Eagle Kingdom. It was difficult for Liszt to really use the aluminum dragon in the Eagle Kingdom for a long time. He did not know that Liszt only took 1 night to conquer the mountain copper dragon Marta. Otherwise, he would not have asked Liszt for help. After all, creatures like dragons stood at the pinnacle of power and had always been virtuous. Moreover, Florence Windchasing Arrow hadn't even completed the spiritual battle, so it had nothing to do with the aluminum dragon. Many knights would fail in the spiritual battle, and it was all in vain. Therefore, there was no moral problem with Liszt snatching the aluminum dragon. If it were anyone else, even brothers, fighting over a dragon would be a matter of course. His Highness believes that since you promised to protect the Greyiron Duchy for 20 years, he would definitely be willing to seek justice for his devout followers. As long as Florence can safely leave the castle of the Marquis of the Boulder, His Highness will immediately offer 5 big elves, all of which are grain and magic potions. Aluminum Dragon. What is Duke Piero thinking? Why does he think that I will not be tempted by the aluminum dragon? Although the aluminum dragon is extremely precious and everyone wants to ride it, Your Highness already has many dragons, and the aluminum dragon lives in the Eagle Kingdom, so it is difficult to continue to conquer it. And once His Highness obtains the aluminum dragon, he will immediately announce that the Greyiron family will become the followers of the Flame family. He will not go back on his word. Bullsh *T. It was all bullsh *T. Whoever believed it was a fool. The friendship between Liszt and Piero was an exchange of interest. There was no friendship involved. Liszt would not believe that Piero would follow him after obtaining the aluminum dragon. The two countries were separated by thousands of miles. Even if Piero was sincere, he would not dare to follow him. The Eagle Kingdom would be the first to not let the Greyiron Duchy go. So, all these were superficial lines. The subtext was that Piero intended to use the 5 big elves in exchange for Liszt's rescue of Florence. And relying on the fact that Liszt was an outsider, he did not dare to stay in the Eagle Kingdom for long and was not a threat to the aluminum dragon. That was why he dared to blatantly coordinate this transaction. Lawrence calmly waited for Liszt to think things through quietly after he finished his words of deception. Liszt was indeed thinking. His ambition for the aluminum dragon did not need to be explained. Anyone who was not tempted by a dragon could only be said to have a problem with their IQ. The smoke mission asked me to help Piero. Obviously, Florence must be saved. The 5 big elves are also worthy of my help. The problem now is how to conquer the aluminum dragon. Obviously, the clue to the aluminum dragon is in Florence's hands. Piero will definitely make preparations. When he was plotting with Liszt, he must also be plotting with others. He would not put all his eggs in one basket. After careful consideration, he slowly said, I will help. 5 big elves are not enough. I need 7 big elves. Your Majesty, don't bargain. I don't like to bargain. I agree to your request on behalf of His Highness, as long as you can save Florence wind-chasing arrow. Lawrence gritted his teeth and agreed. It looked like he was acting. Perhaps this did not reach the bottom line of Duke Piero's promise. Of course, Liszt did not care. I know Duke Piero is full of confidence and thinks that Florence can ride the aluminum dragon. How about this? Let's have a spiritual battle. If Florence succeeds, I will congratulate the Duchy of Grey-Iron. If it fails, I will take care of it. This. I cannot agree on behalf of His Highness. I will talk to Piero myself. He could not figure out whether the aluminum dragon was real or a conspiracy against him, so he needed to make some preparations before going to the Duchy of Grey-Iron. At least he had to ensure his safety. He asked Lawrence to go back first. Lawrence had a flying mount, and it would take about 10 days to return to the Duchy of Grey-Iron from Flaming Island. Fortunately, although Florence was captured, it refused to speak, so the Marquis of the Boulder could not know about the aluminum dragon. He had to discuss it with Duke Piero several times before reaching an agreement. This gave Liszt enough time to prepare, and he could take his time to plan. Achi was now a powerful fighting force. With her by his side, Liszt felt very safe. Fire Dragon Leo and Bone Dragon Winnie were both easy to carry around. Light Green Gem Dragon Knight Emily stayed on Flaming Island, Grey-Iron Dragon and Mountain Copper Dragon stayed behind, and only Invisible Dragon Bard had to ride. Without Bard's powerful space travel ability, Liszt did not dare to be arrogant at all. As for the little water dragon, it would be better to wait until it was born. The main purpose of this trip to the Duchy of Grey-Iron is to save Florence, but we must avoid falling into a conspiracy against us. Liszt said to Achi, "It's hard to guarantee that this is not a conspiracy of the Eagle Kingdom or even the Noble Frost Empire, so Achi, you must be vigilant." "Achi will be careful and protect brother's safety," Achi said, clenching her fist. "But brother, are you going to give up on the aluminum dragon?" "Of course not." Liszt smiled slightly. "To be honest, there is only one fruit left. Although the emerald dragon's hind leg is still there, I don't know how long it will take to cultivate the next one. So it's hard to decide whether to use it or not. It's better to give Florence a chance in the spiritual battle." Then, he spread his hands. 8 out of 10 knights have fallen in the spiritual battle. Maybe with the experience of Florenza, I can succeed without the fruit of the mystical dragon. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version website. Chapter 10-12. Liszt was confident. It was not only because of the smoke mission, which allowed him to use the power of fate even in the battle of the soul. It was also because he already had the Phoenix Incarnation. He had tried it, and the Phoenix Incarnation could still be used in the dragon's soul, and it was full of power. With the Phoenix Incarnation, he would definitely be able to win in the battle of the soul. As long as the aluminum dragon's battle of the soul was not as strange as the invisible dragon's, he was not afraid of not being able to win. Basically, the dragon's battle of the soul was mainly about violence, and some other needs were auxiliary. Only the invisible dragon's main need was to walk the maze, which caught Liszt off guard. That was why he promised to give Florenza Windchaser a chance to have a battle of the soul and let Florenza experience the aluminum dragon's battle of the soul. Then he could start from the needs and easily resolve the battle of the soul. Just as he was preparing to go to the Duchy of Grey-Iron, the great elf rewarded by the smoke mission finally surfaced. It was not evolved from a lesser elf, but a wild great elf found by the pioneer orders of chivalry. This was a great coffee elf. There were many coffee trees in the primeval forest of Flame Island. Coffee was a very common drink among the nobles. Even in the Fire Kingdom, because of Liszt's promotion of tea, The nobles were proud of drinking tea and would still consume a lot of coffee. Therefore, although the great coffee elf did not produce potions, it was equivalent to the value of grains. "I'll call you Mundo." There was no reason why. Liszt just wanted to give the great coffee elf the name Mundo. Gili voila. Mundo obviously did not appreciate his name, nor did he like the new environment very much. He was used to living in the wild. However, this was already an unchangeable fact. As a great sprite, she might be highly valued elsewhere, but Liszt could no longer experience that kind of wholehearted doting. Liszt's great sprites were growing more and more, and on this trip, it was very likely that he would gain another 7 great sprites. So far, not counting the elves in the hands of the noble lords who were forced to serve. He already had 3 dragon elves: man-eating tree dragon elf Kali, buckwheat dragon elf Yadi, phoenix-dwelling parasol dragon elfini. 11 great elves: kelp grand elf Parker, pea grand elf Ash, thorn grand elf Ella, mangrove grand elf Nami, potato grand elf Kutch, banana grand elf Bobby, corn grand elf Teak, corn grand elf Mickey, giant kojak grand elf Carl, calabash grand elf Cree, coffee grand elf Mondo. There were still more than 100 lesser sprites and more than 500 sprite worms, and the number of sprites was still increasing. There were 3 main sources. On one hand, it was the tamed crops in the plantations that gave birth to elves. On the other hand, it was the primeval forests that were seized from the natives of the Moon Killer tribe. On the other hand, it was the mermaids who often swam in the sea to search for elves in the sea. Of course, every time the horn of war sounded, the elves would have a 4th source of income, which was also the biggest source, captured from the hands of the enemy. Now that there are more and more great sprites, it's getting harder and harder to come up with names. Liszt rubbed Mundo's head and lamented. Mundo slapped away Liszt's hand and shouted, "Chilowalla!" The red coffee fruit on the sapling on its head fell off as soon as it was touched. The coffee fruits that fell off were all excellent seed. If dried, they would become excellent coffee beans, and ground coffee would taste great. However, Mundo was very distressed about the small fruits on his head, and did not give others the opportunity to pick them. June was the rainy season on Flame Island, where it often rained heavily. For the Moon Killer tribe of the past, the most frightening thing about the primeval forests that rained heavily were flood. But now, on Flame Island, a large number of ditches had been built in the residential areas, making drainage and irrigation very smooth. Moreover, under the urging of the mermaid saltwater Marquis Blaposi, the ugly fish race had thoroughly combed through the Whirlpool River and several other rivers. They had widened and deepened the rivers so that there was basically no possibility of flooding. They had also dug out a large number of water storage lakes. These artificial lakes could store water during the summer rainy season, and during the winter dry season, they could be diverted into ditches for irrigation, allowing crops to grow during the winter. They believed that this would continue. In a few decades, Flame Island would become a land of fish and rice that could be fed and clothed all year round. On such a rainy morning, Liszt and Achi set off together. They brought along the little fire dragon Leo, the bone dragon Winnie, the unicorn Charlie, and the sleeping little water dragon. Riding on the invisible dragon Bard, they directly tore the material boundary and entered the world outside the material world. They found the natural node in the Eagle Kingdom and traveled out. Then, they flew to the Greyiron Duchy following the map provided by Lawrence Greenlot. When the invisible dragon was tired, the little fire dragon Leo would fly high in the sky. Without stopping, they arrived at the Greyiron Duchy on the 11th day since Lawrence left Flame Island. In other words, Lawrence should have rushed back to the Greyiron Duchy yesterday and reported the preliminary results of the discussion to Piero Greyiron, the Duke of Greyiron. So, Liszt directly flew to the royal palace of the Greyiron Duchy, the Iron Castle. As expected. When Liszt appeared near the Iron Castle, A knight quickly came to salute him, and quickly galloped to the Iron Castle to inform Duke Piero. A moment later, Duke Piero galloped over on a horse. After dismounting, he saluted Liszt. "Your Majesty Liszt, thank you for coming. Please allow me to show you around the Iron Castle. I've already arranged a banquet." "Duke Piero, there's no need for a banquet or a tour. Let's get down to business. What do you think about the cooperation plan I asked Lawrence to send back? I can promise you 7 grand elves, but I hope you can increase the chance of the Battle of Souls by 2. Piero was familiar with Liszt's character, so he did not beat around the bush. "Why 2? Apart from Florence, I also have an illegitimate son who also has the talent to become a dragon knight." Piero was quite proud when he mentioned this. His talent was average, but the talents of his 2 illegitimate sons were unexpectedly excellent. This was also the reason why he insisted on returning to take charge of the Duchy of Greyiron. His legal successor was his eldest son, Pyford Greyiron. His talent was not outstanding, and he was just a conservative person. If the Greyiron dragon was not lost, Pyford could inherit the duchy. Now that the dragon was lost, the family would definitely decline in Pyford's hands. Therefore, he wanted to use the talents of his 2 illegitimate sons to help the Greyiron family return to the dragon-raising family. 2 chances of the Battle of Souls? Liszt narrowed his eyes. He felt that he could give them. Riding a dragon was not so simple. There were so many Dragon Knight candidates every year, but only 1 out of 100 could become a knight. "I can agree, but I want 10 grand elves." Then he added, "If you can't give me that, give me a dragon elf." Piero smiled bitterly. "Your Majesty, your request is too harsh. I can only provide 8 grand elves. The opportunity to ride an aluminum dragon is far more valuable to you than any dragon elf." "The opportunity to ride an aluminum dragon is indeed priceless. But without my help, you will lose it, won't you? How about this? I can provide you with 8 grand elves and 10 lesser elves. If you help me get rid of Pylov, Marquis of the Boulder, I will also provide you with a clue about a draconic dragon. Please remember this book's domain name. Godly Emperor of the 9 Heavens mobile version. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.